Good evening. Will the members and our guests please take their seats? This meeting will now come to order. As all members have received a copy of the call of tonight's meeting, the reading of the call will be omitted. Will everyone please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the May budget meeting of the Greenwich Representative Town Meeting. My name is Tom Byrne, RTM moderator. As all members have received a copy of the proposed minutes of our April 13 meeting, the reading of those minutes will be omitted. I do have two corrections to note, and I understand the corrected version of the minutes was distributed to the committees at their meetings last week. The first correction is in the list of those absent. We will add in District 6 George Sorensen. And the vote on the consent calendar items on page 3 is now 165, 0 against, 0 abstaining. Are there any additional corrections to be made to our minutes? Hearing none and absent objection, the minutes as amended stand adopted upon unanimous consent. All right, that brings us to the call for tonight's meeting. When we get to item 3, which is the proposed budget for fiscal year 2015-2016, I will talk about our procedure tonight. I do note that we are expecting motions addressed to the Byram Pool appropriation, and there are sign-up sheets outside if anyone wants to speak in general on the Byram Pool, and with respect to the Budget Overview Committee motion to reduce that appropriation to approximately $1.9 million. So you can put your name on that sign-up list. I will also put a list up front here. All right, that brings us to the call for tonight's meeting. Item 1 now comes before us. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, item 1, resolved that at the meeting of the RTM on Monday, May 11, 2015, if the business of the meeting has not been concluded by 12 midnight, the meeting shall adjourn at that time to meet again on Tuesday, May 12, 2015 at 8 p.m. at Central Middle School.
Thank you. That being offered on behalf of our Legislative and Rules Committee, it does not require a second. Do you have anything further that you want to say on that?
Just the vote was 11-0-0.
Thank you. Discussion on item 1. All right, this is a procedural matter, a motion to limit, I'm sorry, this is just to adjourn, so this will require a majority vote. I will call for a voice vote. All those in favor of adjourning at midnight and convening again tomorrow night at 8, if we get to the midnight hour tonight, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion has carried. Item 2 now comes before us. Mr. Wells.
Item 2 is a resolution to limit debate for tonight's speaking. It is as it appears in the call.
Thank you. That again is now before us, being offered on behalf of our Legislative and Rules Committee. Discussion on item 2. All right, I will call for a voice vote on this. This being a motion to limit debate, it does require a 2/3 majority to pass. All those in favor of limiting debate as set forth in item number 2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion has carried. That brings us to item 3, the proposed budget for our next fiscal year. Michael Mason, Chair of our Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, Representative Town Meeting members, Board of Selectmen members, Town Department managers and representatives, and our guests and our neighbors. Maybe, Mr. Moderator, this might be the last budget we do in Central, since we may have a better alternative in the future.
I think it's going to be taken up by all kinds of performances, and they're not going to let us in there.
Well, maybe that should be part of our minutes. So good evening, everyone. Mr. Moderator, the BET sent you a recommended budget on March 23rd of this year. It contains recommendations for our fiscal 2015-16 year. I would like to emphasize that we, the BET, consider the budget is a continuation of our day-to-day operations for the town, as well as caring for our needed infrastructure upkeep and our town assets. This budget falls within our budget guidelines of providing a mill rate of less than a 3% increase, holding department operating budgets at 2%, and minimizing increases in headcount. We greatly appreciate the dedication of the town's department heads in working with us to meet our objectives. We sincerely hope you support this budget tonight. On a similar note, as we were voting on the budget, I thought now would be the time to make note of several other initiatives going on in town for the BET. We're in the process of formalizing a formal OPEB policy, our other post-employment benefits. We've never had one. We're working on that as we speak. Parsonage Cottage, the BET has continued to work with the Housing Authority of the Town of Greenwich to come up with a financing plan for their needs in the future and keep them solvent. Currently, we're working on a 2-year review of our fund balance and our debt policy. We've had a very heavy commitment, as you might have seen in the media, for our Human Resources Capital Management System, our ADP conversion. And obviously, the BET came to visit you in April and in May, and quite a lot of meetings for that. So this is a slight example of our agenda, what we have going on besides our regular month-to-month items. I would certainly be remiss, and maybe reminded later, if I didn't take time to offer a sincere thank to my fellow members on the Board of Estimate. As you may not be aware of, this year likely had the largest amount of budget deliberation meetings that I can recall, with almost a 100% attendance by the full Board of Estimate taxation membership. This year also had a large list of modifications to the budget, as well as adding of conditions and are subject to releases in that same budget. With that, I would like to thank all the members of the BET and their efforts, but I'd also like to thank the members of the Budget Committee, Ms. Kiernan, Ms. Tarkington, Mr. Raymer, and the Chairman, Mr. Johnson. I say this often, many people will never understand what it's like to serve on that committee. That is a very, very difficult committee to serve on, and they have all done a wonderful job. On a very sad note, this being Mr. Johnson's last year giving us a set of guidelines or being on the Budget Committee, it might be very interesting. We thought we were going to have a revenue generator next year for a pay-per-view of Mr. Johnson and Mr. Raymer in budget deliberations, but we're not going to be able to do that, I don't think. Again, tonight we're here to answer any questions from a Finance Board point of view, if you have any needs. And with that, Mr. Moderator, item number 3, to act upon appropriations recommended by the Board of Estimate Taxation for the expenses and conduct of the affairs of the Town of Greenwich, Connecticut for fiscal year 2015-16, i.e. July 1, 2015 to June 30th, 2016, and that the item appears on your May 11th, 2015 call. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mason, for all your hard work. All right, will the member please move the adoption of item 3? Resolution on item 3 has now been moved and seconded and is before us. Let me explain our procedure tonight. We all received from the Finance Department a document entitled, which is entitled the 2015-2016 budget, and it is labeled at the bottom with the date of March 26, 2015, RTM, and it runs from page 1 to page 45. This is the document we are working out of on item 3. And it begins with all of the major object codes in our budget. And I will shortly, when I go through the budget, I will go page by page, reading each of those major object codes. And if anyone has a motion addressed to any of those line items, when I call that line item, that is the time for you to get my attention and to make your motion. It is not my intention, having passed an item, to go back absent special circumstances. So please pay attention, please remain if you have something to offer. I have only been notified of the Byram Pool line item being addressed by our committees and districts. So if there's anything else, please make sure you bring it to my attention when I call that line item. And because this budget and all of the recommended amounts from the BET is the resolution before us, any motion to reduce or delete those numbers will be treated as a motion to amend item 3. If there are competing motions addressed to the same line item, while Robert's Rules allows for what we call secondary amendments, motions to amend, our longstanding practice has not to allow a secondary amendment because of the possibility of confusion when it comes to voting. And we're able to accommodate all motions, but we're going to do it this way. And I know the Byram Pool is an example tonight where we have 2 competing motions addressed to that appropriation. And the Budget Overview Committee will be called on to make its motion to reduce first. And I presume the districts that have a competing motion will get up during debate on that and inform the body what the substance of their motion is. But we will dispose of the Budget Overview Committee motion first. If it is adopted, then at that point, the appropriation will be the lower amount suggested by Budget Overview. We will then take up the competing motion to reduce the Byram Pool appropriation to a different amount. Now, in this case, that different amount is higher than the BOC's proposed number, and if the BOC's number is adopted, we can nevertheless raise that number pursuant to a second motion. The only prohibition on the RTM tonight is that it cannot increase a line item above the amount recommended by the BET. So since that Byram Pool amount is in excess of $9 million, we could first go down to the 1.9 million and then back up to 4.5 million. And that's true with any other item where that procedural possibility arises. All right, but that's so that we know exactly what we're voting on and we can limit debate to what's before us. So that, and after I run through all of the major object codes, we will then take up any amendments to the budget resolution language. When that task is completed, we will have amended the budget and will then take our final vote on the budget as amended. The charter provides that the RTM, which has the final approval for all appropriations, must adopt the budget by May 15th. And if the RTM fails to adopt a budget by May 15th, then the budget as recommended by the BET would take effect. So it is incumbent upon us to put this proposed budget in the form that we think is appropriate and not to simply cast protest votes at the end, because if the no votes ended up being a majority, we would have only accomplished adopting the entire recommended budget from the BET. All right, in terms of discussion on this, before I begin going through line by line, I will call for any comments directed generally to the budget. I first will call for all of the committee reports. We know we have now a limit in effect. The committee reports are limited to 7 minutes, except for 2 of our committees, which are 10 minutes. After the committee reports, I will call for any general comments, and then I will proceed line by line through the budget. All right? So with that, I ask the committee chairs to please come forward so that we don't waste time waiting for you to approach. And we will begin with Lucia Jansen, Chair of our Budget Overview Committee.
Good evening. On behalf of the Budget Overview Committee, I want to begin by thanking our elected officials and town employees for their time and dedication in developing the 2015-16 budget. I also want to thank our RTM committee and district colleagues who have worked closely with the BOC this budget year after we re-implemented the budget process described in the RTM rules. The BOC hopes to build on this inaugural year of closer and earlier collaboration in order for us to deliver more relevant and actionable budget information. As we all know, this has been another year. Am I too loud? It sounds a little loud up here. Okay. This has been another year of modest economic gains. Job growth and wages continue to be uncertain, and the grand list, which is 90% of the town's tax revenue source, grew at an anemic 0.5%. The proposed town budget is $451 million, with $396 million in operating expenses and $55 million in capital projects, for an overall spending commitment increase of 3.2% over 14-15. The mill rate will be 11.21, with a 2.75% increase. The operating budget, excluding fixed costs, increases by 2%. We commend the BET's leadership to control the town's operating spending with the introduction of 2 new important budget principles in the guidelines. One is for each department to limit spending at the inflation rate of 2% growth, and the other is no new headcount without an offset decrease. The BOC thanks the Board of Education, First Selectmen, and nearly all town departments and appointed authorities for meeting these 2 new principles in the guidelines. We also want to thank the BET for fully funding the $6 million OPEB annual required contribution. Like the $22 million pension liability, this obligation is large and growing. The BOC reiterates once again our view that future labor union contracts should be reformed of these lifetime benefits that are crowding out essential town services and not in line with the private sector. My fellow RTM colleagues, our other most important responsibility and authority over our town budget is the review and approval of labor contracts. The BOC encourages you to engage now in the analysis of these contracts and to share your views. The next labor contract to be presented is likely to be the firefighter contract. Please recall that on May 28, the Labor Contracts Committee is holding a session to hear your views. In addition to labor contract reform, the BOC is hopeful that the town's continued investment in new technologies, such as the new payroll and phone VoIP systems, the 2 new technology folks in this year's budget, and the school's purchase of administration technologies result in substantial employee productivity. As earlier mentioned, the proposed town budget includes $55 million in new capital requests. The BOC shares the belief with town leaders that it is important to invest, maintain, and upgrade the town's capital assets and resources. However, the BOC continues to see the capital improvement process lack the central planning, prioritization, and standardized criteria for when a project is considered ready for full funding. And this criteria should be consistent among all projects, no exceptions. As we are all aware, the town is facing numerous backlog of capital projects, including many unforeseen soil remediation projects. Further, the BOC has been told there are already $95 million in new capital requests for fiscal year 16-17. More than ever, we need to revamp the CIP to implement standardized criteria, metrics, and process for the evaluation of these competing noble projects. The BOC would be very interested to participate in an effort with the other town bodies to make this happen. On a final note, the BOC hopes that the revolving funds of Nathaniel Witherell and School Lunch Fund that currently are experiencing budget deficits address these issues, and next year we see vast improvement. The BOC vote on the fiscal year 15-16 town budget, including operating, capital, and revolving funds, was 7-4-0 with District 8 absent. Many members expressed satisfaction with the budget, and specifically the introduction of the 2 new BET budget guidelines holding department operating spending increase and headcount. Others were disappointed that the overall town spending continues to outpace inflation and economic growth, and that more could have been done without compromising town services. The vote was taken excluding the Byram Pool and Park project, which we will be discussing later tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, last Monday evening our committee took up 2 line items in the budget book, the first being the Law Department budget, which is item number 140 in the book. The Law Department's budget is increased by 2.1% over this fiscal year. The largest element of that budget is outside counsel, representing 34% of the budget at $915,000. Mr. Fox was questioned about that line item as to whether or not that is likely to stay in that amount. That was the amount requested last year as well. He said that he expects that this line item will continue to be at that level, and he defended it by saying it's money well spent in complicated cases where the town is at risk for funds. Mr. Fox likes to be sure that the town has specialized counsel to represent us in these cases. Our vote on the Law Department budget was 12-0-0. We also took up the budget of the probate court, which is item number 111. Their budget is infinitesimal. Most of the costs of running the probate court budget are used by the revenues coming from probate court fees. Their budget was flat at $43,745. Our vote there was 12-0-0. We also took up the budget resolutions. Mr. Moderator, should I wait for those at the later time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Karen Sadekhan, Chair of our Parks and Recreation Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, fellow members and guests. Our committee has been working since December on the budget with Joe Siciliano, head of the department, and with Tom Greco, the assistant head. In summary, the operating budget, the revenue sources will be up 3.7% from $4,396,880 to $4,560,914. That includes recreation, parks and trees, and marine. The operating costs will increase 2% for the department from $10,397,475 to $10,600,085. That includes administration, recreation, parks and trees, and the marine division. Many questions were vetted with the department at several meetings, and the committee received all the answers and was satisfied and accepted the budget. The department's capital budget totals $1,906,000. They do have vehicles totaling $1,020,000, but those are charged to fleet. In the capital, in Code 801, Parks and Rec totals administration totals $40,000. That's for a feasibility study for turfing the middle school fields. This is from a recommendation from the Board of Parks and Rec from 2014. 812 Recreation totals $68,000. $30,000 for the skate park court upgrade, and tennis court lighting at the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center is $38,000. 816 the skating rink, $160,000 total. An ice resurfacer for $135,000. Replacing the cooling tower steel at $25,000. In 822 Parks and Trees, we have mowers for $55,000. This is old equipment that's being replaced. Park mowers for $18,000, again old equipment. Bobcat skid steer loader, again old equipment, 20 years old. The organic field turf program falls here at $260,000. This is an annual program for maintaining 75 acres of natural athletic fields at 27 locations. The Binney Park Master Plan, $150,000, is for Phase 2 of the project of looking at beefing up basically the plantings and whatnot at Binney Park. Playground inspections and upgrades, again, ongoing annual inspections, $200,000. Tennis and basketball maintenance program, $100,000. Replacement of courts and equipment is needed annually. The Bruce Park Bridge repair is $100,000. The DPW identified that this superstructure has serious problems, is in bad condition, and needs repair. 829 and 832 had no appropriations. 833, Marine and Beaches, $260,000. That's the annual ferry dock inspection and maintenance program that's required by the U.S. Coast Guard. 834, Marine, Harbors and Boat Facilities, that totals $450,000. To replace the Greenwich Pier, the Greenwich Point Pier, $350,000. It's at the end of its life, can't be repaired further. To dredge Byram Marina, that's $100,000. This phase is for studies and permits. It's been 20 years since it was dredged. The total, again, is $1,906,000 without the vehicles which were charged to fleet, and those vehicles, $905,000 falls into the need of 822. Dump trucks, pickup trucks, Bobcat, Toolcat, tree truck, and the Marine Department at $115,000 for a dump truck, lowboy dump truck. Again, that is charged to fleet. We also look at the Griff Golf Course. We had Lou Berlingo with us last Tuesday to have the last discussion. The operating expenses are down 3.3% from $2,056,900 to $1,988,338. And revenues are down 4.7% from $2,057,132 to $1,959,980. Lou, who is currently acting manager of the Griff, was present, as I said. He explained, as did our committee representative, that golf is off a little. Memberships over 10 years have dropped from 4,500 members to 2,500. Why? The economy, interest in golf, people not buying memberships. Rounds are down 7% the last year. Efforts are being made to resolve these issues. The Griff capital budget only has one item, $25,000 for master plan projects and updates, and this is included annually. The committee also took up as assigned the resolutions that refer to Parks and Recs issues. Those are numbers 45 to 50 in your book under resolutions. I will not name each one. The vote by the committee on the Department of Parks and Rec operating and capital budgets, the Griffith E. Harris operating and capital budgets, and the resolutions 45 to 50 was 12-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Small, Chair of our Transportation Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, Transportation Committee tried something different this year. We started a little bit earlier. We met on April 7th at our regularly scheduled monthly meeting so that all the districts could hear presentations from Parking Services. Rita Asreliant, the head of Parking Services, presented, and Jay Domesic from our Fleet Department. They both were well within the BET guidelines on the operating side, and on the capital side for the Parking Services, you'll be happy to know we'll be able to pay our parking fees by a smartphone application soon. There are a few areas that have it now, and it'll be expanding out. And they also have had good success with a license plate scanner on one of their vehicles, and have requested another license plate scanner to generate more revenues. And we'll be replacing 2 vehicles with small SUVs. The Fleet Department always handles its budget very responsibly. Jay Domesic explained to us that his one major capital request is an automated fueling system, which will bring more efficiency to the fueling process. Then on May 5th, we met with the Department of Public Works, with Jim Michael, Joe Roberto, and Commissioner Siebert, who presented their operating side, which was, again, well within the BET guidelines. And we discussed and reviewed their capital section, and discussed quite a bit about the asphalt paving, and this year, every 5 years, I believe, they go around with a laser-equipped van and measure our roads and come up with a pavement index that allows them to then decide which roads need to be repaved. And so we discussed that in detail and better using the data that comes out of that information. We discussed video track detection, which is automation of the traffic signals, and that we see along Route 1, and there's a pilot program going on that was funded by grants down near Exit 3 that is looking at timing those signals. The bridges that are going to be replaced this year are the Bailiwick, Brookridge, and Oneida Road bridges. And there's going to be design work on an intersection at Lake Avenue and Lower Cross Road that's fairly significant reconfiguration there. If you're familiar with that intersection, that's up near the Parkway School, and there's one side that is a very short road that goes up a steep hill and, as you can imagine, causes a lot of trouble in snowstorms. So we also discussed some other transportation-related budget items, such as the buses for the Board of Ed, and then proceeded to take our vote on the budget in its entirety. We voted 8-0-1 with districts 4, 6, and 8 absent on the budget in its entirety. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Arlene Lamazzo, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM and guests. We had our meeting on Monday, and we had a host of guests present. We had Leslie Tarkington and John Blankley from the BET. We had Amy Siebert, DPW Commissioner. We had Richard Feminella, who's wastewater manager. We had Jim Michael, who is the chief engineer of DPW. We had Alan Manelli, who's responsible for building maintenance and construction. Joe Siciliano of Parks and Rec. And William McCormick, who's the DPW business manager. In addition, we had two other guests, Sue Rogers and Sue McCauley, representing the Greenwich Junior League. The divisions under Public Works are really quite extensive. We have under our purview engineering, highways, streets, and bridges, wastewater treatment plant, building maintenance and construction, also sewer maintenance and sewer improvements. So there's a lot to cover. The total DPW operating budget is $20.6 million. And because this represents absolutely zero increase, I mean no increase from last year's budget, we had nothing to discuss. The capital items put forth by this department are too numerous for me to go through one by one. So what I've done is selected certain specific samples. One of them being Binney Park sedimentation improvements for $700,000. This would construct 2 sediment basins to trap the silt. And once the silt is trapped, then the water can flow without carrying any of that to Binney Pond. The Bailiwick Bridge reconstruction, which Alan mentioned, $2.6 million. The story of that bridge is it has required a significant amount of repair over the years. Those repairs have been done, one and then another and then another. And with a storm that occurred in 2007, the roadway was damaged, the parapets were damaged, and they felt it was time to no longer put more money into repairing that, but rather to reconstruct it. The Church Street storm drain replacement sounds like a one-street operation, but it is not. It's $2.8 million. It has a very wide scope, including Church Street, Mason, East Putnam Avenue, and Sherwood Place. Sorry, West Putnam Avenue and Sherwood Place. They have to replace catch basins. They have to install a larger pipe. and things like that. It's a very major construction project for that entire area, which is quite large. This is phase 1 of 4 phases. The soil remediation at Greenwich High School, which is being done for the Board of Education, is $2.5 million. It's ongoing remediation and is phase 1 of 4. The Central Fire Station will be completed in 2017, is in the budget for $2.2 million to continue the construction, to re-execute the Holly Hill lease, which is where the department is currently housed temporarily, fire department administration, and then outfitting the station. Now, it's not going to be outfitted this coming year, but the order for the things that will be part of that outfitting are such that you have to order them a year in advance because it takes that long for them to be produced. So that's included in this $2.2 million. The Eastern Civic Center, there's $200,000 for, quote, design, but that's a very, very early stage of design. Since 1998, there have been extensive capital repairs. You remember $700,000 for the roof because it was leaking, and then there was a heating, what do you call it? Not generator, the heating furnace, you got it. That was not, so it's not cost efficient anymore to keep plowing capital monies into the Eastern Civic Center. So in order to avoid more costly repairs, it was suggested that it was time to look at actually replacing the Civic Center. So that 200 is just a beginning. Then there's Strickland Brook, which is in the Coscob area, $250,000 for design. For stormwater drainage, there is excessive flooding, and again, it's a large area. It's not just Strickland Avenue. It's Bible Street Park, Coscob Avenue, Strickland Road. Homes in that area are densely populated, also close together, and the effects of flooding on these homes is quite significant. So it's time to begin the design and do an evaluation of the need, and currently the final cost is unknown, but we have put a placeholder in there for 18 to 22 million when the entire thing is done, probably in multiple phases. And now we come...
30 seconds.
Oh, dear. You kidding? We come to Byram Park Pool construction. John Doogie, District 1, member of our committee and a delegate to BOC, reported that they suggested a motion to reduce the $9.5 million to $7.6 million, leaving $1.8 million to cover the soil remediation, the demolition of the existing structures, and the future planning. John presented the following motion, seconded by Don Hamilton, District 7. The motion is Public Works Committee votes to reduce funding in account 345, DPW Building Construction and Maintenance, 984-16157, park improvement by $7,605,945, to a reduced total of $1,894,055. The vote was 6 in favor of reducing, 5 opposed to reducing, and District 9 abstained. He would like to wait until his district meets. Those voting not to reduce the $9 million thought that a project of this scope was necessary because Byram Beach is frequently closed due to pollution after rainstorms, and people in the park need access to safe water facilities when the beach is closed. Byram does not have a civic center or other major facility.
Do you have much more, because we're beyond the time limit?
I have just this much. Can I finish? Let me jump ahead. A reduced project would most probably result in significantly less desirable project. Lexi Tarkington provided us with the BET conditions, the 4 conditions that the BET is requiring before any funds would be appropriated. And the conditions BET set would be sufficient to provide extensive oversight of all aspects of this project, including engineering drawings, bids, vetting, contractors, etc. Maintenance, $11 million budget, not including capital. Sewer improvement, $7.2 million. No change in total staff at 123. We voted on the town Greenwich budget as presented in item 3, 1110. And the person since voting no thought it exceeded the cost of living. Thank you for your patience.
Alexis Vulgaris, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. We have, Health and Human Services has 4 town departments in GEMS, and I think if I've timed this right, I can get it in just under the wire, so we're going to go through this really fast. We had budget presentations in April and May. I'll start with the ones we had in April 1st. Department of Social Services. Dr. Barry presented the budget to our committee. Social Services is requesting $3.175 million. This is a 1.9% increase, or about $60,000 over last year. The majority of this increase, about $48,000, is a result of mandatory contractual wage increases. The department also has a reduced headcount by 0.91 of a position, which over the long term should produce some cost savings to the town. They also have about $90,000 in revenue from Homemaker Services reimbursement program. The vote for this department was 7-1-3. District 5 voting no, Districts 1, 4, and 11 abstaining, and District 2 is absent. The delegate from District 5 opposes the budget as a whole because he feels it's too bloated and is uniformly voting no across the board for all of our departmental budget reviews. Districts 1, 4, and 11 abstained because they felt that they did not have enough time to review the presented budget information in advance of the meeting. Those reasons are going to apply to the next department, which is the Commission on Aging and Senior Center. Lori Contadino, Executive Director, presented this budget to our committee. The Commission on Aging is requesting $194,000, which is a $6,600 increase from last year. The Senior Center budget is requesting $711,000, which is an $18,000 increase from last year. Staffing remains unchanged in both programs. Primary reason for increase in both programs is due to contractual wage increases, as well as at the Senior Center, some maintenance expenses related to a wonky dishwasher that they finally had fixed, and subscription for things like brain games, which help with dementia patients. The vote was 6-1-4. Again, Districts 5 voting no, 1, 4, 7, and 11 abstaining. Then in May, we took up 3 departments: GEMS, Nathaniel Witherell, and the Board of Health. GEMS first. Charlie Tufts, John Strong, and John Rabin all presented. GEMS is requesting $4.5 million. It's a 2.6% increase, or about $111,000 over last year. The figure is slightly lower than the total expense increase of $158,000, as GEMS anticipates approximately $46,000 of increased income revenue, thereby reducing their overall net request. GEMS did attempt to provide a clear description of the budget this year. The budget documents provided to us were more representative of what town departments produce. However, several members of the committee felt that GEMS failed to provide data that compared our services to those of other towns, and another delegate was concerned that the GEMS fuel budget had only dropped 5% last year, despite the average price of gasoline dropping over 30%. The vote for that department was 7-4-0, with District 10 absent. Districts 1, 4, 5, 11 voted no. As we said, District 5 is across the board no because he believes the budget's too bloated. Delegates from Districts 1, 4, and 11 felt that GEMS failed to provide adequate details regarding how their services compared to other comparable communities. There were also some concerns about actual versus budgeted expenses. Delegates would like to see actual year-to-date run rates versus using actual figures, which are enclosed in our budget book, from the 2013-14 fiscal year when making a decision. Next comes the Board of Health. Caroline Baisley presented that. The BOH runs probably the leanest budget in town. If you look at their operational budget, almost everything is a zero this year. The department is requesting $2.3 million, or a 1.8% increase. That amounts to about $42,000. They do produce revenue in the form of licensing fees, family health services, and laboratory fees. This year, they anticipate an increase in revenue in all 3 areas. No changes in employee headcount this year. And the vote was 10-1-0, District 5 voting no, District 10 absent. And last but not least, Nathaniel Witherell. Alan Brown, as well as members of the board, all presented. The Witherell anticipates about $27 million in revenue. Their expenditures are budgeted at about $32.7 million for a difference or deficit of about $5.3 million. Contributions from external sources to offset the deficit are 2.4 from the general fund, 1.38 from Connecticut State Historic Tax Credits, and $1 million from Friends of Witherell, totaling about $4.7 million, leaving Witherell with a projected deficit of about $600,000. Several large expenses included in the 2016 budget are approximately $2 million for debt repayment and interest expenses related to Project Renew, approximately $1.1 million for Town of Greenwich allocated costs, and then a capital expenditure, or capital request of $1.56 million to renovate the common areas located in the tower portion of the building. While the Witherell's projected to have the $600,000 deficit next year, this figure underplays some of the important steps that the Witherell has taken over the year to move towards a break-even, profit-driven point. For example, Witherell is in the process of adding 5 single-occupancy short-term beds in the rehab unit. They currently turn away about 264 clients per year from short-term rehab, and by adding these 5 additional beds, they estimate being able to capture 84 clients with a net annual profit from this addition expected at $336,000. They're also working towards creating a more favorable payer mix, increasing the number of private pay clients and Medicare clients by renovating the tower section of the building, the common area of that part of the building. Nathaniel Weather is hoping that private pay clients may choose to live there long-term. Currently, those clients are seeking alternative long-term care facilities because of the antiquated common room space. Our vote was 8-3-0, with districts 2, 5, and 11 voting no, and District 10 absent. The reason for the no vote was the town should not be in the nursing home business, opposition to additional capital expenditures, and concern over the $600,000 deficit. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh Brown, Chair of our Education Committee.
Mr. Moderator, fellow members and guests, the Education Committee took up the budget. A little bit of an overview. We begin in the fall, early fall, with meetings with the Board of Ed and the superintendent and administration to understand their key priorities and drivers for the budget as they prepare the information, and we meet throughout the year, throughout the 7 months or so. We also allocate to each member of the committee, both delegates and alternates, individual elements, schools, be it the museums or library, so that we have an opportunity to get some in-depth understanding of each of the areas that are covered by a very significant part of the budget. We also, as part of those discussions with the schools, our members meet with the principals, the PTAs, others to understand the challenges and the opportunities, the budget needs as we go through our review process. Our committee met on Monday, the 4th of May, with 12 districts present and voting, with many alternates also in attendance. In the 600 section, which is the schools, we met with members of the Board of Education, including Chair O'Neill, as well as members of the school's administration, to discuss the operating, capital, and funding areas of their budget request. Over the prior 6 months, presentations had been given, questions, a lot of questions and answer sessions to understand the difference year over year in each of the areas of the budget, as well as changes in the programming. Questions were asked regarding the allocation of dollars, the funding challenges by school and by areas. Adequacy of the conditions and the maintenance of the school buildings was a key topic as we seek to ensure that what we have stays as good as it can be. In order to meet the budget target, cost savings were being achieved through additional reorganization and some reduction of costs and functions. Remember that about 90% of the school's budget is funded through contract, be it labor or long-term agreements. So that doesn't give the Board of Ed too much latitude in where to make other reductions. Key drivers for the coming year is the migration to digital learning as computers are being widely distributed. We did have a special meeting just focused on the digital learning aspects of the budget. We also looked and tried to understand the impact on teaching, be it the use of materials, be it the preparedness of the teachers and administration to leverage the technology. At our 4th of May meeting, we did ask questions directed at the funding for the new Lebanon school that's in the capital plan. Current funding is being directed mainly at testing around the school grounds and getting going on the architectural processes around the new school. There are conditions by the BET that help stage and control the expenditures or the allocations of the appropriation based on the formation of a building committee along with other conditions. There was quite a discussion and quite a amount of email traffic that occurred after the meeting to help ensure that we were clear on what that process really was, and we believe that the item is reasonably before us tonight. The Budget Committee should be proposed, we understand, in the June meeting so that the selection and choosing of the architect can be completed and endorsed by the Board of Ed, and that the Building Committee can then move forward with the building activities. So on the 600s, we had a vote of 12-0-0. We also took up a discussion in DPW regarding the process around work orders, since other departments do work around the schools. Not necessarily debating the budget, but more the process to ensure that what needs to get done is done. So we appreciate the support by those that attended that. That includes a vote of then 12-0-0. We moved on to the lunch fund, where we were not necessarily talking about the funds, but more, the desire to try to make it or keep it self-funding. What are the choices? And we understand the study that is coming forward to help identify what options might be available to improve the quality, consistency, affordability of meals, and I'll say nutritional value, which I'm a strong supporter of. Hopefully we'll get findings later this fall so that the recommendations can be incorporated into next year's budgeting process, so we'll keep you posted on that. That passed 12-0-0. On the capital in total for the schools, in 680, it passed 12-0-0. We also discussed health and special clinical services, the dental program that's given through the school system. We had the director of that group, Director of Health, Carolyn Baisley, with two of her hygienists to help us understand the item. The budget is about $155,000, covers the work of the team. There are about 6,000 children that they touch and help, literally, with over 30 dentists in town providing other support and pro bono services. So we thank them for their ongoing support of this program. That item also passed 12-0-0. Line 440 is the Bruce Museum contribution from the town to the Bruce Museum. Due to my oversight, we did not have representatives from the museum attending our meeting, so my apologies. We will find an opportunity in the near future to meet so you can help us better understand your overall operating plan and potential capital plans going forward. Remember that the town has a set amount that it contributes. It was established in 1992, which at that time was just about half of the budget. And that's been whittled down, through various activities where the town really is only contributing somewhere around 13% of their overall budget. A lot of contributions and fees are being collected to support the balance of good work that the museum does. That passed 9-0-3 with 3 abstaining. The interest there is to have a discussion around their operating plans and the capital plans, which we will do. They were not necessarily opposed to the item, is my read. We moved on to the Greenwich Library, which was Barbara Emerald Glynn, the executive director, as well as Joe Williams, their new financial officer, and Haley Elminger, the board president, helped us understand their budget request, went through what they're looking around, really focused on how to better, a lot of our discussions focused on how to better integrate the work of the libraries with the media centers in the schools. We think there's a great commonality, great ability to support each other. There's a lot of head nodding in the room, so we'll pursue that. The financial situation of the Peterson Foundation, as you may recall, there's a wing and there's an allocation of money that is received by the Peterson Foundation, which we're very appreciative of. It covers mainly the Peterson wing. It's about 4.5% of the balance is contributed. Over the last year, they've made additional contributions because performance has returned to help fund some of the repairs that are going on at the Peterson wing. That passed 12-0-0, along with the capital and the Peterson and the libraries all together. That's the Greenwich Library. On Perrott, We also had Kevin McCarthy help us with their budget. Nothing really remarkable except for the fabulous work that they do. They're really focused on children and growing opportunities for children to learn, with something 40% of their budget allocated to that. A lot of the capital activities at the Parat are funded by the association. Smaller capital items are generally funded through the town, and we're very appreciative of the association and their support. 1200. On the resolutions, which included the Board of Ed and the library, including the Peterson wing, they all were 1200. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Board of Education, their administration, the members of my committee, the good hard work that they did, all the department heads that put up with our questions and provided very helpful answers to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Berg, Chair of our Land Use Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, fellow members, guests. The Land Use Committee met last Monday night. All districts were represented. Not much drama here. At the end, we took a single vote on the entire budget. The vote was 1200. We had representatives from each of the land use departments. So for Zoning Board of Appeals and for Planning and Zoning, we had Katie DeLuca with us, who actually was there despite the fact that she's on child care leave. So that was a high point. In the Zoning Board of Appeals, there's an ongoing project to put all their applications and files on the web. That's going to create space within the physical office. It'll reduce the need for expensive off-site storage, and I believe it means that you'll be able to access all of those files from your home without having to travel to Town Hall. In Planning and Zoning, Ms. DeLuca reported that there's additional funding in the budget for 3 studies, $50,000 for a Glenville neighborhood plan, which is the last of 4 plans for neighborhood retail and residential areas. They've already completed Byram, Coscob, and they're currently working on Eastern Greenwich, Old Greenwich Riverside. So those funds cover the cost of a consultant who work with department staff, P&Z, the neighborhood association, and the community at large. A second study that's in this budget is for a study of the R6 zone, which, as you know, is the 2-family zone that appears across town. It was noted that major changes have been made in recent years, 2009, 2010, to problems in the R6 zone with drainage, overcrowding, lack of open space. But the community has been vocal that these regulations went from ones that allowed rampant and unsustainable development to those that deterred development and tended to favor high-end properties. So that's why they're undertaking this new study. In the waterfront business zone, which includes River Road, Steamboat Road, and North Water Street, that study is of the regulations which haven't been updated since 1987, and not much has happened in those zones, which was somewhat disappointing to P&Z. So many of those are non-conforming uses. So that study will take place this year. In the Conservation Commission, we had Denise Savageau, the Conservation Director. Conservation is getting a half a position transferred over from Inland Wetlands, so now they will have 2 full positions, which is welcome because they have a lot of turnover when they have a half-time or part-time professional. I'll move on to Inland Wetlands and Watercourses, which is Department Code 173. We had Bob Clousey, who's the Senior Wetlands Compliance Officer. As you may know, we have a new director coming in at the end of the month. But no significant changes there. And finally, Land use is assigned to review capital projects, streets, and bridges. You already heard Mr. Small report on that, and also Ms. Lamazzo. Both of them mentioned the Bailiwick Bridge over the Byram River. One of our members had some concerns about the Bailiwick Bridge. You may hear from him later this evening. Regarding soil remediation at the Greenwich High School, the amount in the budget tonight is $2.5 million, which is far less than the $8 million which we were originally expecting to see. This is because plans for that remediation are still not ready. We had Jim Michael, the chief engineer, and Joe Roberto, our highway superintendent. And Mr. Michael, one of the questions had to do with the Post Road Bridge at the high school, the Post Road Hillside Road Bridge, which is a state project. There will be a public hearing on that on May 28th. So once again, our vote was on the entire budget. Our vote was 12-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Warner, Chair of our Finance Committee.
Good evening, fellow members. Unlike land use, there was a little drama at the Finance Committee when we met Monday night. We had all districts reporting except for District 1. Because earlier in the year we had taken up some of the other items, Nathaniel Witherall and some of the other major items, we devoted ourselves a week ago to primarily the Byram Park issue, which I won't go into extensively because you'll hear more about that later on. We listened to a presentation by the Board of Education, which was pretty much in line with what we had thought. It's within the 2% guidelines. We did not take a vote on the matter, knowing that it was not a controversial issue in anyone's mind. And we did do some administrative work in terms of what we should do, how our members should approach how the town handles debt, and whether we should have resident members of our Finance Committee assigned to parts of the town where we can get regular updates. But most of our meeting was centered on the Byram Pool project. The vote was in favor of the project, 6-5-0. And going around the table, most of the sentiment for the favorable vote was that the town, namely us, had been surprised just too many times with MISA, with the Ham Avenue School, and overruns. And there was a sense that we shouldn't approve this whole banana, for lack of a better word, at one time, and we should take a second look and approve only the one tranche. And in this case, the BOC is for 1.8 million of the 9.5. You'll hear much more about this later on, so I won't go on about it. But that, I wanted you to know, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Newman, Vice Chair of our Town Services Committee.
Mr. Moderator, Selectmen, DET members, RTM, and guests. My name is Richard Newman. I'm Vice Chair of Town Services. Mr. Harkins is out of town tonight, so I'm going to be making the presentation. Town Services oversees 13 department budgets: RTM, Ethics, Emergency Operations, First Selectmen, Purchasing, Administrative Services, Human Resources, Registrar of Voters, Information Technology, Fire Department, Police Department, GEMS, and Town Clerk. Our budgets range from $2,000 for ethics to over $20 million for PD. I found that interesting. $52 million in budget items, $32 million in salary, 389 employees. What we are trying to accomplish in Town Services is to understand what dollars the departments are requesting, not just what are the dollars they're requesting, and how do those dollars fit into the framework questions we ask of all of our department heads. Our framework questions are: is your mission statement comparable with others in your line of work? Is the money being spent wisely, and how do you quantify that? What are others in your field doing to save money? I find that one interesting because if they know what others are doing, then they are trying also to save money. What is the biggest risk to the departments? And if there were no restrictions, what would you change in your department? We look at the numbers, we discuss line items, but really it's a bigger discussion with the department heads of what they're doing and how we can partner with them and try to help them going forward. We send a team out to meet with each department head, and then we have the department come back to us and present during our April and May meeting. So what did we find? We found it is very difficult for the managers to put together a budget that meets a 2 to 3% growth guideline when 80 to 95% of the department budget is salary and increases 2.5% per year, usually by contract. But our department heads managed to do this year over year and keep within the budget guidelines. All of our departments are functioning at a high level. They're using the money we give them to improve the departments. Our town clerk has computerized all of our records from 1906 to present. That has increased the efficiency for using the system and has increased our revenue. The RTM must mail a copy, we also learned this, must mail a copy of the call due to town charter. Maybe we should change that and allow electronic delivery if it's requested. Administrative services is also lowering costs by using better technology that we paid for. Purchasing. The new phone system that we approved is proceeding on time and within budget. Also, we learned this year that when a budget is submitted for a construction job over $400,000, it includes a state-mandated prevailing wage rate. What that means is that any labor is at a union worker rate, which means when you build something, let's say a pool, the cost of the town is not comparable to your club or your home pool. The Registrar of Voters has created a state-of-the-art system that allows us up-to-the-minute counts during the voting process. Our police department has helped us to make one of the safest community, or has helped us to become one of the safest communities in the United States, responding to 65,000 calls last year, including 6,200 with GEMS. They invite all of us to participate in the Citizens Police Academy, which gets rave reviews. You can ask many of the members here, many in town service have done it. Our fire department gets top ratings in the townwide survey of government. The training center on North Street that we paid for is fully operational and is hosting its first Firefighter 1 class right now. They're certifying 15 new volunteer firefighters. The steel is up on the new Station 1, if you've driven by Havemeyer Place. And the chief this year would like to present his staff increases plan to the RTM districts, again over the next year. We found HR is still trying to smooth out the operation of our new payroll system, which processes 3,400 checks every 2 weeks, while the implementation of the HR information system, which also helps process 5,000 job applications per year, test 1,500 applicants, onboard 55 full-time employees per year. This has been a great success. GEMS continues to be one of the top-performing emergency medical services in the country, responding to over 6,200 calls, as I said, per year with our police department. Their cardiac save rate is 35 to 40% compared to the 16% national average. They have been reporting to us in a similar format as other town government departments that started last year, which is greatly appreciated by town services. We recognize their budget also includes all post-employment and other employment costs, which are not included in town department budgets. So when you look at those numbers, understand OPEB is in there also. we think GEMS should increase the public's awareness of their nonprofit status and in turn increase charitable contributions to the organization. We were surprised at the amount that was raised every year from the town, and some of our newer members thought they could help increase those numbers, which in turn would lower our costs. Our new head of information technology used the past year to evaluate what we have, what needs to be improved or replaced, and where we should be headed. Online security has been increased. They are adding 2 positions, one for increased network performance
30 seconds.
and one for implementing technology solutions, which should increase government costs. Town Services voted on the budget that we reviewed, not the entire budget. We voted 9-1-1. One district was absent at the time of the vote. One district abstained and plans voting no on the budget. One district voted no because they don't like the process we used to develop the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike Warner, Chair of the Finance Committee, wanted to correct a statement he made earlier.
I apologize. I had said that the Finance Committee voted in favor of the Byron Pool. It did not. It voted in favor of the BOC motion to limit the Byron Pool 650. Thank you.
Thank you. That now brings us to the budget. I did say I would call for any comments directed in general to the budget, so this would be the appropriate time. Do we have any interested speakers who would like to address the budget generally? Mr. Porter, District 12. Irv Porter. Anyone else I invite to come forward and take a seat up front? And I remind all speakers that there is a 3-minute limit in effect.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I rise to just raise 5 points for your consideration in the role as a liaison, one of the 2 liaisons on the Capital Improvement Committee. I have a conscience, and that's the reason I stand up tonight before any of the issues that might be a little controversial are discussed. And I will cover some of those in my comments. First, relative to the Byron Pool. I clearly remember the Byron Pool initiative in 2007. At the time, I was part of a study group trying to figure out the appropriate long-term disposition of the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center, what it should be, who should own it, how to fund it, and how to staff it. There was some learning in that whole process that's applicable to the Byron Pool. The reason is that we had an indoor pool or aquatic center as one of the inclusions in the consideration that we made. And when we did a needs analysis throughout the community, the prediction that had been made by the consultant we used turned out to be absolutely bang on. And that was, if you did a needs analysis and you included a pool, whether it be indoor or outdoor, in the analysis, you would get support for it. It didn't mean that if you built it that they would come, but overall the sentiment towards a pool was very positive. So in that context, think about that from the standpoint of the Junior League. Whether they did that needs assessment or not, I can't comment. But I can tell you that the overall sentiment that I hear relative to the Byron Pool is very, very positive. And in that context, I don't think that the Junior League, whose original proposal was to help in the financing of just the pool, should be held hostage. A second teaching in that Eastern Greenwich Civic Center, which we shelved, tabled, whatever you want to call it, in August of 2009, was that we simply couldn't get private funding support for a feasibility study. We estimated it would cost us $500,000 to do a feasibility study. Nobody wanted to pay that kind of money. In August of 2009, the economy was still headed down.
30 seconds.
Given all of that, the notion of doing a feasibility study for any project is very difficult unless it's funded by the town. The third teaching has to do with what the performance was based upon the projects that we evaluated. And I just make this observation, we reported this to you at the March meeting, and compared with the original estimates for what the project was, and then looking at what the project actually cost for all of the major capital projects during this recent period, the performance was 37% higher than what had originally been estimated. It is in that context that I raise these for your consideration, and I ask you tonight do as I will do, which is to vote my conscience. Thank you.
Dr. Carlson, District 1. And these are general comments. I would have characterized that as a Byram Poole comment. We will get to the Byram Poole. So I'm not asking for Byram Poole comments now.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, today in America, the Federal Reserve says that it will not raise interest rates until there's 2% inflation. Over the period 08 to 12, our economy was basically mildly deflationary. During that period and continuing now, we raise our budget approximately 3% a year. Over the deflationary period, our budget added to the tax bill of more than 15% in real terms to the people. The times that we're in now are different from the times 10 years ago, when a 3% increase annually was considered very satisfactory. I consider the situation with approximately 3% and perhaps much more next year increases in the budget as unsatisfactory if we have a situation which is either very slightly inflationary or slightly deflationary. I would ask the members to consider that times have changed. They changed at the end of the last decade, and we could do better than we have been doing. This budget tonight is unsatisfactory because it's a budget like that of 10 years ago, which were different times.
Thank you. Any further comments directed generally to our budget? All right. At this point, I will begin on what is labeled RTM page 1 and proceed through the major object codes. Once again, if you have a motion directed, please, when I call it, call out for my attention. General Government, 101, Representative Town Meeting. 102, Ethics. 103, Historic District Commission. 104, Emergency Operations. 105, Office of the First Selectman. 106, Purchasing. 107, Administrative Services. 109, Human Resources. 111, Probate Court. 120, Registrars of Voters. 130, Finance. 131, Retirement. 134, Information Technology. 135, Assessor. 136, Board of Assessment Appeals. 139, Tax Collector. 140, Law. 150, Town Clerk. 161, Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals. 170, Condemnation Commission. 171, Planning and Zoning Commission. 172, Conservation Commission. 173, Inland Wetlands and Watercourses, one word. 174, Land Use Administration. 195, Commission on Aging. 196, Senior Center. Fire Department. 2001, Fire Administration. 202, Training. 204, Fire Marshal. 205, Firefighting Force. 206, Apparatus and Equipment. 207, Department Buildings. 208, Volunteers. Police Department. 211, Administration. 212, Dispatch and Communications. 213, General Services. 216, Criminal Investigation. 217, Uniform Patrol. Department of Public Works. 301, Administration. 302, Engineering. 312, Highway, Streets, and Bridges. 315, Board of Ed Maintenance. 321, Waste Disposal. 346, Building Construction and Maintenance. 351, Building Inspection. Vehicle Maintenance. 380, Fleet. Health Department. 401, Administration. 405, Environmental. 410, Special Clinical Services. 415, Family Health. 425, Laboratory. External Entities, 440, External Entities. Social Services. 501, Administration. 502, Adult and Family Services. 509, Aging, Homemaker Only Services. All right, with respect to schools, with respect to operation, or what we have referred to as Class 1, we just take any motion directed to the school's budget and would apply it to the 600 administration account. Any motion directed to the schools? All right, brings us to libraries. 701, Greenwich Library. 702, Peterson Wing. 710, Perrott Library. Parks and Recreation. 801, Administration. 811, Recreation Supervision. 812, Organized Recreation. 814, Eastern Civic Center. 815, Community Centers. 816, Skating Rink. 817, Western Civic Center. 821, Parks and Trees Administration. 822, Parks and Playgrounds and Fields. 829, Trees. 831, Marine Supervision. 832, Maintenance. 833, Beaches. 834, Harbors and Boating Facilities. Fixed Charges. 901, Employee Benefits. 902, Unemployment and Workers' Comp. 908, Insurance. 911, Taxes for Town Properties. 926, Non-Public School Costs. 950, Repayment of Debt, Principal. 999, Transfer to Other Funds. That brings us to the end of the general fund expense. Capital projects. Here we can, of course, go by individual line item, but I will just read the major object code. 134, Information Technology. 138, Assessor. 206, Fire Apparatus. 213, Police General Services. 302, Engineering Division. 312, DPW, Highway, Streets, and Bridges. 315, DPW, Board of Ed projects done by DPW. All right, this is where the Byram Pool is. 345, DPW Building, Construction, and Maintenance. Lucia Jansen, Chair of our Budget Overview Committee. Incidentally, I did leave some sheets out front. Could someone do me a favor of picking them up and bringing them forward, please? There's a table just outside the auditorium.
Good evening once again. The Budget Overview Committee makes a motion to reduce the $9.5 million proposed appropriation in account 345 DPW Building Construction and Maintenance 984 16157 Park Improvement by $7,605,945 to a reduced total of $1,894,055.
$1,894,000. What's the rest of it? $55?
Yes.
1894055. That is what you are seeking to reduce to. All right, that being offered on behalf of our Budget Overview Committee, it does not require a second and is now presently before us.
Okay.
All right, discussion on the Budget Overview Committee motion to amend by reducing the Byram Pool appropriation to $1,894,055. As the proponent of this, you have 10 minutes.
The BOC wants to begin by stating very clearly to the town at large that we support the Byram Pool and Park project to proceed forward as expeditiously as possible. We also very much appreciate the work of the Junior League and the number of hours of volunteer time and funds they have dedicated to this project. The BOC motion has been made because of the following important elements. 1, after 2 years that this body appropriated in 2013-14 and again in 2014-15 $400,000 for the Department of Public Works to develop a quote-unquote comprehensive plan. None still exists. 2, the RTM is being asked to fully fund a project that DPW has only completed 30% of the architecture and engineering drawings describing the scope, design, and cost of the project. 3, DPW's original $11.3 million request to the First Selectman and BET was reduced to $9.5 million during the BET budget hearings and has created even more ambiguity for what deliverables the RTM is receiving, since DPW cannot explicitly explain what project features will change as a result of the reduced funds, especially given that only 30% of the A&E drawings exist. 4, due to the scarcity of A&E drawings, no professional estimator has confirmed neither the site preparation work, the review and cost of the 3 pools, nor any of the pool and beach buildings. This lack of validation is customary of town construction projects of this size and complexity. 5, there exists no written comprehensive operating plan submitted by the Department of Parks and Recreation that the Board of Selectmen, BET, or RTM What's that?
What's the matter?
I don't know. Well, I thought there was something that was in play here. Okay, sorry about that.
We multitask.
We're multitasking. That's okay. There exists no written comprehensive operating plan that the Board of Selectmen, the BET, or the RTM has been given outlining the projected revenue and expenses and a narrative of the ongoing operations of the pool and beach facility. 6, the long-standing fiscally prudent practice by the BET and RTM of first appropriating the architecture and engineering drawings in order to have a full understanding of the design and cost estimate is not followed. In this case, the RTM appropriation is calling for the body to approve a combined appropriation of the drawings and the construction, which is simply not responsible. Finally, and most importantly, the BET conditions do not mitigate the RTM's fiduciary responsibility to the community and to the taxpayer we represent to gather all the facts and the costs of this large, complex construction project before fully appropriating the approval of a project. As I said earlier, the BOC supports this project. In addition to stating without hesitation our support of the project, the BOC motion includes another unusual show of support, and that is an upfront statement to both the First Selectman and the BET that we are supporting and welcoming an interim appropriation once the Department of Public Works and the Department of Parks and Rec have completed their A&E drawings and operational plans. They have said to be ready in approximately 5 months. Again, this unusual exception by the BOC was made to support the community at large and the Junior League that we want this project to move forward as soon as possible. In other words, with an interim appropriation, there is no project delay. There is also virtually no difference between the $9.5 million appropriation from the reduced appropriation the BOC is recommending and this two-step financing with an interim. The comptroller of the town will be later addressing the body later about the financing. The BOC expects that the funds will be used by DPW and Parks and Rec to cover completion of the A&E drawings, the oversight and work of the soil remediation, and a written operating plan of the project. The BOC will be moving later in the meeting to amend the bond resolution if the first part of this motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further discussion on the BOC motion to amend the Byram Pool appropriation. Michael Warner? To be followed by Don Hamilton.
Mr. Moderator, I wonder if it would be possible to hear from the Junior League, that it would be
They will speak, but I'm recognizing you now.
All right. First, let me just state the obvious. It'll take a minute or two. Those of you who have been to Byram Beach know that there's virtually no access to water there. The beach is rocky and muddy, and kids and parents and adults don't go in the water. And they have a residential pool, which is overcrowded. Most kids get in for 20 minutes before they have to jump out and wait in line. And that beach is closed more than any other beach in the state of Connecticut. So the thing that we have here is a sorely underused resource that could be terrific, but it's just not being used right now. It's a very high potential resource as well. It has a lovely, small, quiet beach as long as you stay away from the water. It has beautiful vistas. It has picnic areas. And most importantly, with its high potential, it could provide some geographic balance to our town. It could provide, with a terrific pool, we could have a magnet for kids who love water on another side of Greenwich, which may even take some pressure off of our jewel, Greenwich Point. The question before us is, what is the best solution for us right now? With respect to the BOC plan, it has some positives. One of the positives is, in a two-step process, it allows us to take a look 5 months down the road when some of the plans that have not yet been fully developed are better developed. And as I've said previously, we've had some surprises, and there's some sensitivity to that. And this plan does give us a second look. That's a good thing. What it doesn't do is we have a terrific organization in town, the Junior League, who wants to fundraise for this pool. However, what the BOC motion does, it's for fundamentally soil remediation. And when that soil remediation is complete, it doesn't make any statement that we're going to do a pool. It means that we're going to do what we would have to do anyway, which is remediate the soil. It doesn't...
30 seconds.
Ooh. Even though I'm the proponent for the opposition?
What?
Sorry. All right. What I would say to you is I would not vote for this because you lose the Junior League, potentially going down the road. If you included a pool, you'll see a motion later on where dollars just for the pool deck, which are well defined, and there's not a lot of mystery with that. That motion brought by District 3 and 9 gives you the best of both worlds. It gives the Junior League something that they can fundraise for. It divides this proposition into a two-step process where we get a second look, and it brings us all the things we want. So I would urge you not to vote for this motion, but to vote for a motion that gives us all of what we need. It gives us the time for the town to develop its plans and mission policies, and so I would not vote for this motion. Thank you.
All right. I should have explained, we did adopt a limit on debate that set a limit for speakers of 3 minutes per motion. There is an exception for the proponent and the principal opponent, who is to be determined by the moderator, who each would have 10 minutes. And the reason for that setup is to allow the town sufficient time to rebut if a motion is made to cut the budget, to have someone in the administration, that is who I would deem to be the principal opponent of a motion. So whether it would be Mr. Tessie or one of the department heads, that's who I think would be entitled to the 10 minutes. Everyone else would be 3 minutes. All right, so Don Hamilton, to be followed by Kathy Youngman, President of the Junior League. Yes, Karen Sadekhan. You have not, all right. I had assumed we had those reports. Mr. Warner, is that what you were, where's Mr. Warner? Is that what you were giving? No. A committee report? No. Okay, Mr. Hamilton, I'm going to apologize and ask you to step aside. I thought we had the committee reports. I do remember Mr. Warner only taking 2 minutes and saying he was going to talk later, so I apologize if I did not give you an opportunity to report on behalf of the Finance Committee on this item. So I think you did reference, you might have something more to say as part of a committee report on this?
I have nothing more to say as part of a committee report.
Okay. All right. Any other committee reports then on this item? I invite you to come forward. Karen Sadekhan, Chair of our Parks and Rec Committee, and thank you for reminding me.
Thank you. The Parks and Rec Committee took up the discussion on our meeting Tuesday night. We had Sue Rogers and Sue McCauley from the Junior League with us, 3 members of the BET, Jeff Raymer, Nancy Weisler, and Mary Lee Kiernan. It was basically discussed kind of in 3 segments. This is the facts that I would just like to share that came out of our discussion and what we considered at the end when we took up the BOC's resolution. Sue Rogers and Sue McCauley presented the facts from the Junior League that they'd already contributed $40,000 to some of the initial planning, that the membership had a 96% approval vote on this project and approved the first funding of $250,000 and $125,000 in each of the 2 budget years, this year and next year, the following year. The Junior League will not do fundraising for the 2.5 until the project is totally funded by the town. The Junior League will raise the 2.5, which is the actual estimate for the cost of building the pools, and expects to be part of the process in selecting and approving the pool design. They felt that fundraising will be jeopardized if there's a delay in the RTM approval of the total project funds, and if there's a year's delay, the league would have to take another vote of its membership to be sure that the membership of the league wants to stay involved in the project. They also felt that having completed A&E work would assist them in their fundraising. Joe Siciliano, the department head, was with us and presented additional facts for the committee. Even when the 9.5 is approved, the release of the money is subject to the conditions imposed by the BET. The town is trying to do the project in a 2-year cycle, remediation in 1 year and construction in year 2. The project has already been through, as most of us know, the approval process, and if the design is changed, that would require revisiting planning and zoning. A professional estimate has not yet been developed on the total cost. Project bidding takes place after the approval of the funding. We were then corrected by Nancy Weisler and said that the bidding can actually start and be contingent on the full funding. The Junior League, Joe said, likes the design of the pool work so far and expects to be involved in the final design decisions. There were some comments from guests and members who were present, committee members. With or without the Junior League's $2.5 million, the town will fund the $9.5 million for the Byron Pool project. Residents in District 4 are still concerned about parking. The heavy demand on the facility, how long will that last? Joe estimated that the interest will decrease after the first year. The question of non-resident use of the facility, policy will be set by the Board of Selectmen, as will fees. There is a Plan B for the project, which would involve costs going from 9.5 to 6. Would the Junior League still support that? Yes, was their answer. The pool is their primary interest. Alan Manelli's estimate for the project has been consistent. Notes were made about the buildings. The main building will hold bathroom, showers, and the food concession. 6 buildings, while 6 buildings will be removed, they'll be replaced with 2 and an additional equipment building. Jeff Raymer of the BET stated he believed that Alan Manelli's figures for the projects are slightly high. Alan's first estimate was 11, and the BED reduced the funding to 9.5 as they felt there was a little bit of error in the estimates for the buildings, not the pools. Remediation must take place whether or not the project goes forward. The estimate for remediation, as you know, is $1.3 million with a 15% contingency. 9,200 tons of soil are to be removed. Bathrooms, question about the use of them when they'll be open, May 1st till October. Comment that buildings had to be built out of the V flood zone. The point was made that while this project was initiated 4 years ago, only the BET has really been involved, not the RTM. Obviously, it's the BET's power to release and place conditions on appropriations. During the second phase, Lucia Jansen, chair of the Budget Overview Committee, spoke briefly. She brought to us a motion from the BOC, which you all know, to reduce the appropriation of funds from the $9.5 million to $1,894,055. She noted that complete operating costs were not really available, that there's a need to resolve the residency issue use. Are non-residents fees a financial consideration? Does the pool pay for itself? Would non-resident fees help cover operating expenses? She used the Waveney Park swimming pool in New Canaan as an example. For the first 14 years after it was built, no non-residents were allowed, but for the past 3 years, non-residents have been welcomed with residents to help cover pool costs. She said a compromise would be to fund as the BOC's proposal motion is, and then to follow up once the A&E is complete with an interim appropriation. The comments from the committee on her remarks: any compromise still commits to the project. The RTM is not the party to start a conversation about the access policy. Pool usage will be resolved by non-RTM parties, i.e. the Law Department and the First Selectman. The BET has made a well-educated decision on funding. Will the subject to release money go away if funding is reduced? We also noted what the votes of other committees had been on the resolution that Lucia presented. After a very lengthy discussion of over an hour, the committee decided to consider the BOC motion. Carol Zarrilli moved that the BOC motion to reduce the funding to $1,894,055 be considered by the committee. Josie Parnell seconded. The vote was 7-5. Districts for the motion, in favor of the motion, were 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11, and 12, and against were 1, 2, 3, 8, and 10. Thank you. And someone left their glasses here.
Thank you.
You're looking for them.
Any other committee reports on this BOC motion to reduce? All right, hearing none. Mr. Hamilton, to be followed by Kathy Youngman, Junior League President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator, fellow members, delegates, guests. Just a quick statement. I think the RTM is incredibly well informed about this project. Anybody that's had their ear to the ground or has been listening to the flow of information out of the BOC and the Department of Public Works has a pretty good handle, I think, on what the central issues are going forward. However, the one issue we can control at this point is to first seek clarification of the estimated cost based on the customary review of acceptable final engineering and design plans. This budget request of $9.5 million, first of all, is a number pulled out of thin air, as far as we can tell, is not predicated on following established CIP guidelines. DPW has in place and has had for a full year the full funding to complete the preparation of specifications necessary for the department to formulate a reasonable estimate of all-in cost. These plan specifications must be completed as soon as possible in order to proceed with construction in time for the earliest possible completion of the pool. These plans are and should be the gating factor, and if completed in a timely manner, an interim appropriation will in no way delay the project. Agreeing to the last-minute BET proposal to review the project in stages and affirming the requested funding effectively takes the RTM oversight off the table. The RTM represents all interests of the town, with almost no politically driven decisions or interchanges. Cursory approval of this important and worthwhile project without a properly vetted cost estimate, supported by full knowledge of the variables and risk, poses unavoidable challenges to improving our capital budgeting and planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Youngman, to be followed by Christine Edwards, District 8.
Good evening, Moderator Byrne and ladies and gentlemen of the RTM. My name is Kathy Youngman, and I'm president of the Junior League of Greenwich. I thank you not only for letting me speak this evening, but also for accommodating the Junior League members at the district and applicable committee meetings last week. Any project of this size and complexity must be, of course, go through the process of proper governance and be subject to the appropriate level of scrutiny and application of fiscal discipline. This is what the leading body of this town must do. This is your charge. We acknowledge it and we do appreciate it. For any partnership to continue to succeed, there must be alignment of interest and shared sense of purpose and mission. In order to maintain momentum, when we begin our fundraising initiative, the Junior League of Greenwich must be able to state unequivocally that the town of Greenwich, as embodied here this evening, stands behind this project and wants to see it succeed. We hope that your decision is one that strongly supports the future of the project to ensure that our collective goal of success, in order for the Junior League to embark on a capital campaign of $2.5 million, which includes our gift of $250,000, we must be able to state that we stand shoulder to shoulder with the town in our efforts. Undertaking is this is one of our largest undertaking projects that we've ever taken on. But I say that we are confident that we will succeed based on our past fundraising achievements. The depth and breadth of our skills and abilities of our 700 members to mobilize and fundraise is great. We now turn to you, our partners, and ask that the 230 members here tonight, as representatives of the residents of Greenwich, show that you too wish for us to succeed. I therefore ask respectfully that you support the BET recommended conditional appropriation of $9.5 million rather than the motion brought before you by the Budget Overview Committee. Under the BOC scenario, construction money is not included at all in the 15-16 budget. The BOC motion does not, in fact, contain language regarding an interim appropriation. Language describing this possibility is included as a footnote and therefore not a guaranteed occurrence. We also understand that an interim appropriation is not an action which can be initiated by the RTM, but by the BET, which adds another step in the process. To this end, we have heard conflicting views as whether the timeline under the BOC motion would differ from the timeline envisioned under the BET,
30
conditional
seconds.
recommended appropriation. Therefore, due to the uncertain timetable for the release of construction funds, the JLG will be unable to embark on a capital campaign as it creates uncertainty and a lack of definition for a project, issues which no donor will want to partake in. It leaves us with no job and no goal. Our resources are precious and vital to the community, and as projects continue to present themselves, we must be able to move forward and use our funds and manpower as it best serves our community. So to be clear, if the BOC motion is supported and construction funds are not included in the 15-16 approved Town of Greenwich budget, the Junior League of Greenwich will unfortunately be unable to continue and move forward with this project. Thank you.
Christine Edwards, to be followed by Dean Gamanos.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, colleagues here. Had I been at the BOC meeting instead of having surgery, the vote would have been 6-5. I don't really think that's a mandate for this particular proposal. I do prefer what has come up with District 3 and 9 to just stalling this all the way. But for those of you who ever wondered if you'd ever need a zero-entry pool, I'm an example that anyone at any time, at any age, might need that. And that is why it's become so popular for municipalities and why this was the design chosen, which allows for handicap participation. You never know what can happen. I'm a guarantee of that. So my view would be we don't put this on hold in any respect. This is something important for the ambience and for the quality of our town. This makes this a very, very particularly happy section for people to look at, and I am, with full disclosure, a realtor. To have a pool like this makes Byram very, very interesting, and as well as all the new schools that we've had built. It brings up that value. To not have this leaves us with a rocky precipice that no one can swim in. So I can do nothing more than to suggest to you to support either 3 and 9's motion to have the funding for the pool at a much higher rate, because we need to move forward with this. We can't leave this on hold, and we can't leave the Junior League, who has done so much work to prepare funding, left on the hold as well, when they've done so many projects we know and have seen in this town come to full conclusion, whether it's family centers or children's schools or boundless playgrounds. Whatever they put their mind and attention to gets done. And I can only encourage every member here to vote, in effect, to have this move forward and get done. Thank you.
Dean Gamanos, to be followed by Bill Galvin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen. I'm on the RTM, and I sit on the Parks and Recs Committee as well as DPW, and both these committees have endorsed the BOC proposal as I do. I should also mention that I like to swim. I swim at Todd's Point in the summertime. I swim at the YMCA, and I look forward to swimming at the new pool in Byram. And I think that hopefully that will not be in the not too distant future. But before we dive in head first, let's test the waters properly. Let's see how deep they are and make sure that we don't go in over our heads. And I think the proposal at hand does not slow down the project at all. I think it's just good management, and I urge you to not pull the plug on finishing the proper estimates for this project, which shouldn't slow it down, and I urge you to support the BOC proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Galvin, to be followed by Judy Crystal.
Mr. Moderator, fellow members of the RTM, good evening. I'm Bill Galvin. I'm Vice Chair of District 7 and also an alternate on the Budget Overview Committee. I'm speaking tonight about the Byram Park and Pool project that I support, and I think that it is clear from the comments made that the RTM as a body supports moving forward with this project. The issue that I think we're talking about is one of process. No one has stood up, and I doubt anyone will stand up and say, absolutely, we should not be building this pool and rehabilitating this park. That's not the challenge. The challenge is one of process. This budget item has generated considerable debate, and while no one expects all 230 people in this body to agree on virtually anything, this type of discussion, both pro and con, has gotten more people engaged, and that's when democracy works best. Tonight, I'm asking you to approve the BOC motion to reduce the funded amount for the Byram Park and Pool project to $1.9 million. I'd like to remind the body of a quote that's most often attributed to Senator Moynihan: "Everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not his own facts." We have a lot of smoke that's circulating, I think, relative to this subject. There's a lot of emotion, but there's also quite a bit of smoke. Consider this fact. IRF referred to this earlier. The RTM CIP Liaison Committee reported to the RTM a couple of months ago. It showed that on average of the 6 recent major capital projects in Greenwich, with all of the architectural and engineering drawings completed before a shovel went into the ground, on average, they came in 30% higher than estimated. 30%. We're talking real money, and it's not just MESA. Average 37% was the money that was the number that IRF just used a few minutes ago. Now, unlike these other projects that were referenced in IRF's report a couple of months ago, this one, the Byram Park renovation and the pool project, this project has only 30% of the A&E drawings done. It's outside the process, what we consider our normal process. That's an issue we should focus on. It's just outside the process.
30 seconds.
Well, if our construction average is 30% higher, you can imagine how this project, if history's any indication, where this could go. It seems to me that all the more reason that we should manage this project with a bit more closely and approve the funds in smaller segments. Consider another fact. Approving the BOC motion to reduce this item to $1.9 million would not slow the project, contrary to what's been said. The town's controller, Peter Minarski, has confirmed that this would not slow the project. Having interims, which clearly the BET is not going to get in the way of, they want this project to move forward, it would work together with the RTM, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Much attention has been focused on the Junior League's involvement. Surely the Junior League wants this project to go forward, and I sincerely doubt that they would totally back away from this project. They've committed $250,000. You've heard $125 in each of the next two fiscal years.
Mr. Galvin, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy Crystal to be followed by Steve Warzoa.
I have to tell you, this is the first time I've been to one of these meetings in years, and I am really impressed by the number of people and the amount of work that goes into running our town.
Thank you.
Okay, I've lived in Greenwich for more than 40 years. I have been a member of the Junior League for more than 30 years, although I'm part of the 4% in their vote. And I have lived in Byram for more than 10 years. I know the park, I use the park. The pool was a disgrace. The pool needs to be rebuilt. There is no question that the pool is a disgrace. There is, however, a very large question. The large question is, what are we building? The lovely drawings that the Junior League has produced, those beautiful four-color renderings of Never Never Land that have pictures that don't include I-95, which is right there, folks, and it's going to present traffic. We are talking about a project where we're increasing parking by 30 spaces, but we're increasing the number of swimmers by hundreds of %. This is nuts. You are going to take a neighborhood that functions. Byram is a wonderful, wonderful family of a neighborhood. We share our part of town with Pemberwick and Chickahominy and Glenville, but it is Byram that is centered on that park. And if you have cars all over the place, you are going to destroy the neighborhood feeling, and you are going to create accidents like you cannot believe. Somebody, there are no drawings, there are no real plans. Somebody look at this and make sense of it before you proceed. And if the Junior League isn't willing to do it, our town ought to. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Warzoa to be followed by Valerie Stouffer.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, fellow members, and guests. I wanted to point out a couple of things that have been stated by previous speakers. One of the things mentioned is that this project is out of the norm for our process. Well, just in the last few years, the RTM has approved several major projects that do not have full A&E design drawing, including the Central Fire Station, the fire training facility, and the temporary fire station at the Horseneck parking lot, all of which were overwhelmingly approved by the members of this body. So if it's out of the norm for this project, why wasn't it out of the norm for those projects? That is a really good question and should be answered. We talked a lot about what the Junior League does and what they plan on doing. You heard from the president of the Junior League tonight that if the BOC motion passes, the Junior League will be left with no option other than to throw their hands up in the air and walk away, because there is no demonstration of a commitment for the pool project that this town wants, that our residents deserve, by the body that represents its citizens. It is our job to be advocates for our citizens that we represent and make sure that their voices are heard. Overwhelmingly, we have heard that our residents want this pool. Again, the Byram Beach is the single most closed beach in the entire state of Connecticut. So if it's the most closed beach, where are people supposed to go? Remediated fields? That's not a really good option, is it? I think what we need to do as this body is to reject the BOC's motion to reduce, and then I encourage you all to support the District 3 and District 9 motion that will be coming up later. Thank you.
Valerie Stouffer, to be followed by Jane Arnone.
Good evening, Mr. Byrne, members of the RTM, and guests. I'm Valerie Stauffer, a member of the Junior League, and very proud and supportive of the contributions of the League. The League's initiative to encourage a new pool complex in Byram Park deserves thanks from all of us. But I'm also a member of District 7 of the representative town meeting, and I take my responsibilities seriously. At this May meeting, we are asked to give the final authorization of funding for the town of Greenwich. Once we appropriate funds for a project, we have no further say in the expenditure of those funds. The BET asks that we approve $9.5 million for the Byram Park Master Plan. In good conscience, I cannot and will not vote for this funding when 70% of the plans have not been completed. The public has questions about design, parking, and operating costs. In 5 months, when the plans are available for viewing, the BET will return to the RTM for an interim appropriation. At that time, the Junior League will have had an opportunity to approve the plans, but also the citizens of Greenwich will have had that opportunity. And I did want to point out that the Junior League has said that they will actually not begin fundraising until they approve the plans and the funds are released. Therefore, we're all at the same 5-month schedule. People ask why the pool project is the focus of cuts from the budget. The Byram Park Master Plan is the only new capital project in the current budget. As Irv Porter noted, the RTM, the average capital project, has resulted in 37% over budget. We, as members of the RTM, need solid facts and figures before we sign off on such an allocation. If the representative town meeting is to have a purpose, we must demand accurate numbers before appropriating funds. Please take your role as a member of the RTM seriously. Thank you.
Jane Arnone, to be followed by Larry First.
Good evening, everybody. I am speaking in favor of the District 9 and 3 motion, and to also go into some due diligence that I actually undertook. We've received some emails in support of the BOC motion that I actually wondered whether they were correct, and made some phone calls myself to determine whether the information in those emails were correct. And specifically, the information was given to us that the pool, because our motion, the 9 and 3 motion, is only to add in the pool amount, which is a very firm number, and we wanted to make sure that that in fact was true. We had been advised that members of the BOC had been in touch with the firm that designed the pool, Weston and Sampson, and I called them myself today. I spoke to 4 people for about 45 minutes total, and spoke actually to the person who spoke to the BOC members that called them, who advised me that they in fact have nothing to do with the pool project and have no knowledge about the pool project. They actually, the person that gave the BOC their information in the emails that were sent to us was a person that's in construction for that company and not aquatics and has no design experience at all. I managed ultimately to talk to the project manager for the pool, and was able to ask him whether the cost, the 2.3 that's been allotted, is a hard and fast number, or if there's actually 20 to 30% of squish in that number. He told me that, in fact, there have been a lot of detail that's been put into the 2.3, that it's a very hard number, that's a conservative number. He said he wouldn't want it to go higher, that they looked at a lot of numbers. For example, the concrete. They made sure that they took a New York versus a Connecticut number, which is a 20% higher amount, so that there would be some extra squish in the number, so they won't have to come back for the pool. The pool is a hard number. It should be added back into the number, rather than the BOC's completely truncating, cutting this project, and the Junior League is going to walk out. Makes no sense. One other issue that he raised to me was the some of the materials, which is another point that was raised in the email that we got from the BOC, saying that the materials were not sure in the estimate. That's not true. He advised me that, in fact, they did a lot of details. They have committed a lot of time and detail work into that number. The other issue that was raised was the underwater and the rock, and so in other words, the site plan wasn't good.
30 seconds.
He said, in fact, that's not true, that a lot of time has gone into it, that it's a raised project, has nothing to do with groundwater or any of these other sort of the specter of cloud and smoke that the BOC has put on the project. So I'm asking you please to vote for 3 and 9. Thanks.
Larry first, to be followed by Dan Osamir. Is Larry first here? No? F-U-R-S-T? Dan Osamir? To be followed by Terry Lowe.
Good evening. I'm Dan Osamir from District 5, and I'm also on the BOC. There's been a lot of good discussion tonight, so I'm not going to go over any of the previous issues, but I wanted to touch on a couple of things. One is, a lot of comments here about the BOC. And in fact, the BOC was the initiator of this motion. However, I would note that 3 other committees have also passed it. It's it's not common for 4 standing committees of the RTM to all pass one motion that's important as this. The second point I'd like to talk about is the 30% A&E. In terms of the quality of the documents and the planning, I think there's 2 issues. One is cost control, which I think generally we accept that the RTM can do its best on, but ultimately that's up to the BET and the first selectman and the town departments to truly manage the cost of a project. The second is what the project's actually going to be. I think in this case, we have a project where we went from a cost of a few million a year or 2 ago to 11.3 million. Now the BET said 9.5 million. In fact, there are many in the BAT that are thinking about option A or B. So the real question is, we're being asked to approve a project, not just when its costs are unknown, which ultimately is true of almost any project, but I think the community is being asked to approve a project where is the 9.5 going to cover 3 pools or 2 pools? Should the concession, how big is the concession going to be? How many parking spots? So in the end, the reason I support the motion is not purely cost control. It's a function of a year or 2 from now when this project's done. Hopefully it will be a great project. But with the plans that are in front of the RTM right now, I would challenge anyone in the RTM to say that they'll know what will actually be delivered. And I think that's a place where the RTM should not be. I know there's a lot of hardworking people who have worked on this project since 2007, well before I was on the RTM. But the fact is, we're being asked to approve something right now in which the best efforts have not been done to truly outline exactly what we're going to get and why we should vote for it. So to me, a 5-month interim delay will not delay the project and will result in the RTM voting on a project which, while we all want it to happen, will be a project we all know exactly what we're going to get, and we should all, whether or not, when it's voted yes or no, everyone will get what they expect. Right now, that simply will not be the case. Thank you.
Terry Lowe, to be followed by Chris von Kaiserling.
45 years ago was the first time I was ever asked to serve on a committee formed by Ed Billig, then the head of Parks and Recreation, who dared to think of a network of town pools. But for the first time, it looks like the possibility of a single town pool is finally on the table. But it hinges on the magnanimous work of the Junior League, who will support the project to the tune of $2.5 million. This may be the last chance to see a pool project move forward, and I would ask the RTM to approve the full $9.5 million to make sure that happens. I currently tutor in the Reading Champions program in the Lebanon School, and just last week I asked one of my fourth graders if she was looking forward to swimming this summer, and she replied she could not swim. Sad words for a swim coach to hear. Swimming is such an important life skill for safety, recreation, and for fitness. And there is no better place to learn to swim than an outdoor swimming pool, where in the summer you can take both lessons and play and swim for hours at a time to become a confident and competent swimmer. And for people like her, the future is now. The project needs to move ahead as fast as possible. This is a project that has been a long time coming, and its need is greater than ever and ever more obvious. Let's not risk losing the support of $2.5 billion at this point to get this project done. As the previous speaker indicated, from what I've seen of the plans, there are no hidden costs that's going to arise with respect to this pool. They've taken careful analysis of the site, and they know what they're building. I also object to the point of hearing it because all the time is 3 pools. It's really one big pool with a couple little adjuncts here, and it's a great pool for young people and old people and handicapped people to use. It is a crying need for this community. So I would ask that we fully fund this project right now, get it built, and hopefully I'll have a chance to swim in this pool sometime during my lifetime. Thanks.
Chris von Kaiserling, to be followed by Karen Fosiliotis.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Moderator. It's an honor to follow and agree with a gentleman who's been so laden with many awards in swimming and aquatics. I think we need to step back on this whole project. And this is as usual. We've been presented with something that's been twisted around. Basically, what this 9.5 that we have in front of us in the present budget proposal is a conflation of several different projects. Everybody keeps calling for simplicity the pool project, but that's not at all what it is. In fact, the pool project is one of the minor segments of this whole project. You'll recall the Byron Park redesign plan, redevelopment plan has been going on for 4 years. We've backed that, we've approved that. That's part of this 9.5. You have the pool at around 2.5, give or take, and then of course we have our always infamous hazardous waste cleanup at 1.8. What we have before us tonight are 3 choices that are being given to us. You will hear, hopefully, if this item is voted down, a proposal by Districts 3 and 9, which I think are reasonable, sensible, and responsible, and you should listen to it carefully. The 1.8 of the budget overview is being put forward on the principle of informed appropriation votes. And it's absolutely correct. We should be informed. I applaud them for bringing this and making a stand on it. The 1.8 only covers the pollution or the hazardous waste cleanup, has been pointed out. So basically, it's a no-go till you show vote. The District 3 and 9, on the other hand, is a resolution to reduce it, to basically cut in half to a $4.5 million appropriation, which would cover the 1.8 that everybody agrees has to be done, and approximately 2.5 for the pool project itself. The 2.5, we brought this up for the Districts 3 and 4 in our meeting, which came earlier on Wednesday. And the Junior League said that they could, with the 2.5 inclusion, have enough sufficiency to go ahead with their fundraising. That would suffice, and they could continue if we only in the RTM approve 4.5 tonight. The So that would allow the pool to go forward and give the Junior League what it needs and the town commitment to raise their funds. What's not in this plan, and the 4.5, would be things like the seawall repairs, parking redesign, new concession buildings, changing bathhouses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
30 seconds.
The Byram community will be disrupted greatly in the next 2 years with a new Lebanon school replacement. Now, the beach, it's another 2 years in a very transportation-challenged community. The reduced 4.5 understrokes what the BOC correctly is concerned about and informed fiscal votes by the RTM. We deserve more than concept and guesstimates. It reduces to, reducing to 4.5 will do that, while continuing the healthy policy of public-private partnership, which takes the mundane in our usual construction and turns into excellence in this town. I would ask you to vote against the 1.8 and reserve your vote to vote for the 4.5 coming up. Thank you.
Karen Foss-Leotis, welcome back as a new member from District 7, elected tonight, I understand.
Thank you.
To be followed by Timothy Oberweger.
Thank you, Tom. This is a first for me following Chris von Kaiserling. Usually I go before him and then he shoots me down. So it's very refreshing tonight.
Well, given that he asked if he could also give a district report, he may be following you, but I think it's appropriate to know how your salary you graciously give your moderators being put to use. I think that request was denied.
As stated, I'm a new member just sworn in tonight. So why am I here standing before you to ask you to support the BOC motion? Well, let's review what this motion is not about. A vote for the BOC motion to reduce this line item is not a vote to kill the project. Indeed, despite what many opponents claim, the first line of the motion states that the BOC supports the project. A vote for the BOC motion to reduce this line item is not a vote against the Junior League's donation. Members of the RTM voting for the BOC motion value the public-private partnerships. The Junior League has set their condition as to the funds they will commit, not the RTM. We are voting on a budget item, not the Junior League's condition for whether they donate or not. A vote for the BOC motion to reduce this line item is not a vote to postpone the project beyond 2 swimming seasons. Indeed, if the town departments responsible for the project performed by having A&E drawings to the RTM by October, the project will be on track for completion as originally planned. A vote for the BOC motion to reduce the line item is not a vote against a certain section of town. Let us be clear tonight. Despite what opponents to this motion claim, this is not an east versus west, central versus west, backcountry versus west issue. The proposed project is a town project that will have impact on a town beach and a town's community, especially with parking and policy for use of the pool, among other things. In fact, the very neighborhood that this project will be built in has voiced questions as to whether their issues and concerns have been met. This is a town issue that is being addressed by the BOC motion and is not made to penalize one section of town. A vote for the BOC motion to reduce this line item is not a vote against trusting the BET to do its job with respect to this project, and is not the RTM micromanaging the project. I don't need to remind members of this body that the RTM's role is to review the budget, question, and make budget reductions when appropriate. It is not to simply accept what the BET puts before you. This is the type of project the RTM should reduce based on the information available to date, which is little to none. Ask yourself, would you give all your money to a contractor to build your house with only 30% of the design work done? Of course not. The notion is ridiculous. This body has reduced the capital expenditure before for not having complete A&E drawings, and it should do so now. It is not a trust or micromanaging issue. It is a fiscally prudent response by the RTM to the information available to it at the time of its decision. So when considering your vote tonight, do not focus on what the opponents to this motion say it is designed to do. Vote for this motion for what it does. Reduce a capital project to allow the RTM and the community a chance to see what their money will get them. It's that simple. Vote yes for the BOC motion.
Timothy Oberweger to be followed by Frank Pozluzny. I'm sorry? Yes, sir. I can't hear you. You're going to have to come forward. Point of information.
I understand your need
The other amendment is to reduce it to approximately $4.5 million. Is that correct? That's the other amendment. And as I explained, I'm going to put this vote, the BOC motion to reduce to the $1.8+ million first. And the members can adopt that, and then we'll put the other one, and the members could adopt that as well. All right, so you have an option to reduce the 9.5 million to either the 1.9 approximately, which is currently before us. And after we decide that, you can approve that, and then you could decide to increase it to 4.5. All right, but we're going to do it separately. Mr. Oberweger, to be followed by Frank Posluszny.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, RTM members, guests, members of the Junior League, our BET sitting right before me. I would like to offer another perspective, which is one from District 5, where I live, very close to Todd's Point, or Greenwich Point as we now call it. I have two daughters, ages 8 and 9, and they are both they love swimming more than anything else on this planet. And last summer, we happened to visit Byram Pool 3 times to go swimming, and it might have been the most enjoyable 3 moments that they shared here in Greenwich. We do swim elsewhere, but the tragedy was that there is right now possibly the worst public pool I've ever seen in operation. I lived in Manhattan for most of my childhood, so this is a disgrace. And the absolute disgrace now is that we're saying that the BOC is more knowledgeable than the BET that has approved the $9.5 million monies, which will be supported $2.5 million by the Junior League, who I am now following the president of, who stood here moments ago stating that they will retract their support from this project if we go forward with this BOC decision or amendment to this motion. I think that is a travesty, that there are kids that this is their only access to any pool in this town. And think of your grandkids or your own children or your great-grandkids or your nieces or your nephews. They might be those children that have nowhere else to swim except for this pool. And to say we should take a step back and start discussing numbers again and again and again, and look someone like the Junior League in the face, never looked a gift horse in the mouth, as they say, and say to them, you know what, let's consider other options. And you know what, the Junior League spent 7-8 years already on this. They don't mind being, jerked around for another year or so. Let's just keep spitting back at them that, you know what, we appreciate it all, but reality is we're not sure that we want to move forward with this project. 30 seconds. So I would vote. I would say very authoritatively that the BOC motion should not be approved by this body, and that the $4.9 million reduction should also not be approved by this body. That we should go with who we've elected, or not us, but our constituents have elected, the BET, to review and come back with a reduction that they've already made and move forward with this much needed, desperately needed project for our town. Thank you.
Frank Posluszny, to be followed by Bernard Schneider. Mr. Posluszny.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak on this. It's very simple. I'm an industrial and architectural design engineer. This is what I do for a living. I don't blame anybody for being apprehensive about wanting to allocate a dime for a project that maybe they feel hasn't been developed fully enough to know what you're going to get for your money. So I'm proposing simply that we stop the conversation and start the process. I'm supporting this project, and I'm supporting it with my effort to do whatever my talent pool is, and finding other gentlemen and ladies who are in the construction business to get a participating committee of small group of people that will take the preliminary drawings, whatever this 30% is, get those drawings on a table and get a group of experts together that are in this business to push this forward, to develop the renderings, to start specifications of details so that you know what materials are going to be allocated for this. You know, what you want is a plan, and we have many, many talented, capable people in this town that are probably willing to step forward. Also, we're surrounded by a number of colleges and universities with students that are just now out of their school year looking for projects and internships that we could probably, and I will be willing to approach, with the permission of the town, to approach Yale's College of Architecture, Norwalk Community College Construction.
We are debating the BOC motion. Are you in favor of it, or are you opposed to it?
I'm in favor of not reducing any of the amount, but I am probably most in favor of Districts 3 and 9 to allocate the money to push this forward and get this process moving, not delayed. Thank you.
Bernard Schneider, to be followed by John Dolan.
Thank you. One of the advantages and disadvantages of speaking towards the end is that everyone has made the same points you want to make. So I'll try and just make 2 points. The first is, I think the larger issue here is the role of the RTM. There's certain malaise, and we're questioning ourselves as to why we come here. And I think the RTM should play a stronger role in town governance. I am strongly in support of the pool project. I think, as many speakers have said, not having one to date is a disgrace. I'm convinced by the many speakers who have come before me that says the intent of the BOC motion is not to rear-end delay, but to actually move the project forward properly. I think this gets to the role of the RTM. Are we willing to simply push the project aside to others to do, or we maintain control of the project? A speaker here said he did not have much confidence or less confidence in the BOC than the BET. I can read to you from a report in the newspaper which says that the present presentation by the Recreation Director and Parks and Rec and the building superintendent is woefully short of documentation or specifics, no price comparisons, no specific plans. I don't mean to make it a contest between the BOC and the BET, but I think on this particular project, we owe it to ourselves to support the BOC, which I think has gotten right to the heart of the issue. I do have one procedural question, I'm finished with my remarks, and that is, I take it there would be more support for the 3 and 9 motion because it addresses the Junior League's concern. So it would seem to me that if the 3 and 9 motion would go down, then the instant motion would go down, and therefore I think at the heart of the discussion today is we should get directly to the 3 and 9 motion, which, as I can tell, is exactly the same as the motion before us, but satisfies the concerns of the Junior League.
Okay. We're going to take up the BOC motion first. In fact, I was approached prior to the meeting with the possibility that the District 3 and 9 motion would not be offered if the BOC motion is defeated. All right, Mr. Allen, did you want to speak? Bob Allen? Did you want to speak? I'm not sure whether you wanted to speak on this or the other motion. Okay, thank you. All right, excuse me. For what purpose do you rise? Well, you're not signed up on the list for the BOC motion. Someone brought, this was for the pool on the merits. I see your name. This is just a motion to amend. You signed. If you would like to speak on this, I will. All right. John Dolan, to be followed by Rob Pirelli-Minetti.
I want to echo the last. Good evening, all. I want to echo the last speaker's comments. In speaking at the end of the evening, I've scribbled out 90% of what I would like to say, so I'll focus on three major parts. One topic that I think needs to be addressed is the notion of the Junior League participation. I think it's being used by both the Junior League and people in favor of different amendments in ways that are probably not realistic. We do hear from the Junior League that 96% of the members are in favor of this proposal. They have demonstrated tremendous support for the last number of years. A vote to go forward can be done on 30 days' notice. And so to the extent people are arguing that the Junior League would be unable to continue were one amendment or another voted, I think is disingenuous, and we shouldn't be bringing the Junior League into this discussion. The second, just to kind of raise a topic that hasn't been talked about much, but Lucia talked about the notion of precedence. One of the things that we should be talking about in any capital project is the impact on operating budgets. And I've heard no discussion tonight on operating budgets, both in terms of what the size is, the projected number of users of this, who's going to pay. So, for example, just because no one else has offered numbers, if there are 40,000 users for the pool, the Byron Park facility per summer, and barring the New Canaan numbers, which people have highlighted as a comparable pool of having a total budget of $400,000, we're looking at $10 per use of this pool facility. Who's to pay that? Is it the users? Is it the taxpayers? Is it going to be out-of-town residents? Whether we're dealing with this issue or we're dealing with Backcountry Firehouse down the road, the idea of addressing the operating budget is a critical component to addressing to a capital budget. And so for that reason, I would support the notion of the BOC amendment, because it lets us do in the next 5 months what can be done in the next 5 months: demolition, remediation, and drawings. If we have an exact, precise number of the pool to the penny, nothing can be done in the next 5 months. And I would imagine no fundraising can be done by the Junior League, because they're going to want to see final drawings before they start their fundraising. So those 2 points, I would argue, are critical here. And then the final one is, as has been reiterated by other presenters before, this gives the RTM a voice. The Junior League wants a voice, appropriate for them. The BET wants a voice, appropriate for them. If the RTM's to have a voice going forward, it should approve the BOC amendment and then deal with an interim down the road, which, as Bill Galvin mentioned, can be handled in terms of any kind of bonding resolution. Thank you.
Rob Pirelli-Minetti, to be followed by Arlene Lamazzo. Well,
Hi,
excuse me. Before you go, there was someone moved the previous question, and there was a second. And while that is appropriate under Robert's rules, our custom is to provide those who have taken the opportunity to sign up an opportunity to speak. So I will not accept that motion at this time and allow our 2 final speakers. Mr. Tessie, did you want to speak on this? And Mr. Tessie. And after that, I will come back to you for a motion for the previous question. Mr. Pirelli-Minetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Rob Pirelli-Minetti. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee and representative from District 12. I'm strongly supporting the BOC motion, and the reason is not anything negative about the project as conceived. The ultimate issue here, I mean, everybody agrees. I don't think there's a person in town that doesn't think that something needs to be done about the Byram Pool. The question is, whose decision is it? Ultimately, the final decision-making authority in the town of Greenwich under our charter is the representative town meeting. And we should be making decisions based on completed projects. Ordinarily, the projects that come to us are far more fully designed and funded and vetted. The problem here is that despite our having appropriated money for the design work, it simply hasn't been done. Now, I don't want to point fingers because I don't know why it hasn't been done, but it hasn't. And just because
somebody hasn't done their job isn't a reason for us to abandon our job to look at the project as it's really going to be done. Not only that, I would point out that as to the environmental stuff, which we are planning to fund at this point, nobody knows until we actually get in there and do it what the environmental costs are going to be. We found that out with MESA. Now, people say this is different, it probably is, but nonetheless, I'd like to see that approached a lot sooner than the other stuff. I'd also like to see people finish the plan for the project. The Junior League has been very clear that until they actually approve the final design, they're not going to raise money. So delaying this for an interim appropriation once the drawings are complete is not going to delay the project. Further, I can think of nothing that would more spur the town to get the project drawings and other specifications completed than the fact that the project won't go further forward until they do. Thank you.
Arlene Lamazzo to be followed by Peter Tessie.
A lot of talk has been circulated and keeps being repeated about the fact and the problem that only 30% of the engineering design drawings have been completed. When that was originally stated way back there months ago, what has happened since then is that the Department of Public Works, the engineering department, and the construction manager have continued to work on the design and the engineering documents. And so at the moment, they're 50% completed. In 2.5 months, they will be 90% completed. So I trust the BET in making their conditions, which I thought were appropriate, except for one, that when they see these, within the next 2.5 months, we can move forward without waiting months and months and coming back for an interim. I ask you to consider, these are hard facts that I got just recently from the construction and maintenance and construction supervisor. So I'm not making them up, they're real. And I ask you to trust the BET that those 4 conditions are very, very stringent and that they will do their work and stay true to following through on those 4 conditions. Thank you.
Peter Tessie to be followed by nobody.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM, guests. I rise to speak in support of the Byram Pool Park project. I recognize that all in attendance here certainly have a viewpoint. Many have spent and devoted numerous hours looking at the merits of the proposal. A lot has been said about process, about past projects, and to sit here and try to refute each and every point certainly would not be a good use of your time. But I will say, when you look at statistics or you look at information, you have to look at it holistically and look at it in total. And as an example of that, we heard a little bit about the increase in capital projects through CIP, and I believe it 37% increase on average. I would point out that a project like the Central Fire Station, if you look at the appropriation statements that come out of the BET and how they're coded, you will find that within that project, we are paying for the rental of temporary facilities. Again, those facilities were identified by the prior administration. They were approved for funding by the BET and the RTM, and we continue to carry that cost. And of course, that's all enveloped in the cost of the project, but not necessarily specific to the building construction itself. So I think when we're looking at this, clearly there are some valid points to look at, but we need to make sure we are forensic and decipher what should be applied where. In terms of the Byram Pool Park project, clearly our foremothers and forefathers had the great wisdom back in the turn of the 20th century when I believe a family by the name of Rich set aside some resources and acquired that for the enjoyment of the residents at that time. If you look back, the turn of the 20th century, very different from today, but certainly a changing town with numerous new immigrants moving in and establishing themselves here as they help build the town. Fast forward to 1975, this body took the wonderful step of acquiring the Rosenwald property, another 10 acres, to fully expand that existing site. It was a very contentious debate, as I researched very briefly. There were motions to reduce the amount of the appropriation to take the land by eminent domain, but in the end, wisdom prevailed, and the town appropriated the $700,000+, and we acquired those 10 acres with the accompanying buildings and residential pool. Now, we've enjoyed the use of that pool for over 40 years, and I think that was certainly, we got our money's worth. But now's the time. We all are saying tonight, I listened to everybody, that we're for the pool. It's just how do we get there? And I think that our professional staff actually has done the job that they were asked to do. They've come forward with the proposal. It's documented. In fact, you received documents electronically from the chairman of the BET, which outlined the Planning and Zoning Commission's final coastal site plan approval, which enumerates all the various aspects of the particular proposal that is 30% designed. In fact, it mentions in the final point that the staff will sit down, the P&Z staff will sit down for review of the final engineering and architectural plans. They'll look at the capacity of the pool and beach area. They'll look at the detailed information on the cleanup of soils. And finally, they'll look at the slope of the proposed fill that will be brought in. So there's an element of this discussion that we haven't focused on tonight, and that's the role that planning and zoning plays. And this clearly was submitted to you to show you that it has followed a trajectory that is consistent with other capital projects. And in fact, without P&Z, nothing can go forward. We're in our 375th year as a town. We all know it's a great town. Our citizen satisfaction survey you helped pay for last year affirmed what people believe in terms of value for their tax dollar, 5.6 on a 7 scale. It looked at what people value in terms of public safety, education, and recreation, ranked very highly. This is clearly a lot of money, but it is an investment for the future. It's not just for today, it's for the future. And I look at our goal and our mission each and every day that we step up to do these jobs we've been elected to do, is to look out for the welfare of our fellow residents and to ensure value in the Greenwich residency. And ensuring value is not just dollars and cents, it's really defining quality of life and all the services that municipalities provide. We rank very high, and there's a reason for it, because of all of you, because of everyone who takes the time and care. So in terms of the BOC motion, I think you should vote it down. You should give the path forward for the public-private partnership to thrive. We have a rich tradition of public-private partnerships that have helped build this town over the last century, and we should not do anything to jeopardize that. The controls are in place. I have confidence in P&Z. I have confidence in our professional staff. And I have confidence in the BET, who carefully deliberated and laid out a set of conditions that give a checkpoint at each and every step of the final processes to bring this project to construction. So I ask your indulgence to give the BET an affirmation of the condition they've placed and support the project moving forward, to not lose and jeopardize the public-private partnership, and more important, jeopardize the town continuing the rich tradition, ensuring value in our residency and the amenities that make it so great. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call for the vote on the BOC motion to reduce the Byram Pool appropriation to $1,894,055. Let me just explain one more time. If you are in favor of that reduction, you should vote yes. If you are opposed, you should vote no. And we have been informed that there is another motion addressed to this same line item to set the appropriation at approximately $4.5 million. And we can adopt the BOC motion. We could then adopt that motion, and that $4.5 million number would then take effect. Or we could reject the BOC, we could adopt. You understand, you have the ability to approve both or reject both, or any combination thereof. All right, so will the district chairs please mark your voting cards. BOC motion to reduce Byram Pool appropriation to $1,894,055. $055, and proceed to poll your delegation. At this point, I'm going to await the result of that vote before proceeding further. So I don't mean to complicate the voting, but now would be an appropriate time after you vote if you want to get up and stretch while the vote is being tallied. All right. I have the results of the vote. Will everyone please take their seat? The result of the vote on the Budget Overview Committee motion to reduce the Byram Pool appropriation. Those in favor, 89. Opposed, 110. Abstaining, 1. That motion has failed. All right, I understand we have another motion. But before I call for that, Mr. Detchen, David Detchen, Chair of our Labor Contracts Committee, I had wanted to call on him at the beginning of the meeting and neglected to do that, so I'm going to call on him right now.
As you may recall, a couple of months ago, I mentioned that about every 2 years, the Labor Contracts Committee holds an informal public session where we ask members of the RTM to join us and to give us their views on various aspects of labor contracts, labor contract negotiations, and the like. To the extent we can, we'll answer questions that might be asked, but really what we prefer to do, and this is really what we want this to be, we want this to be a session where we do less talking and more listening in terms of what you all have on your mind, whatever ideas that you might have in terms of our getting a sense of what the RTM as a body is thinking about in terms of labor contract negotiations. As you know, we don't have any say in what is negotiated. We can't dictate what's negotiated, but obviously to the extent that we have a sense of what your views are, we are in a better position to convey to the First Selectman and to the town's labor negotiator and also the Board of Education what it is that's on your mind. This meeting will take place on Thursday, 28 May at 8:00 p.m. in the Cone Room. 28 May, 8 p.m. in the Cone Room. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I understand we have another motion addressed to the Byram Pool. Who is going to present that? Michael Warner of District 3.
Mr. Moderator, this is a motion from District 3 and 9 to amend the funding for the Byram Pool Park Master Plan. It appropriates funds for A&E drawings for $40,000, soil remediation for $1.2 million.
Well, the only thing we're doing is a bottom line number. So why don't you just... I will
to
call
reduce
for
it to
discussion on this, but I just want to get the motion before us. So this is to reduce it to what number?
$4,512,375.
All right, that being offered on behalf of our districts does not require a second. So this is a motion to reduce the Byram Pool appropriation to $4,512,375. That is now before us. Discussion on the District 3 and 9 motion to amend. Mr. Warner.
I'll be brief. This motion was intended to provide you with an alternative that ensured that we brought in the Junior League and gave them something they could market on our behalf. It was also intended for those of you who were concerned about the preparations and whether or not the town had done all its homework, to give you a second look. It accomplishes both of those things. Frankly, the position of many of the individuals who I've been speaking with in the course of the evening would not be disappointed if this motion was turned down and we voted and we allowed the original BET budget item to stand as is. But we are offering this motion for those of you who would not vote for the original BET and wanted the assurance of a two-step process where the town would have an opportunity to develop its plans further to your satisfaction. I would say the following, however. The town has taken quite a few hits in terms of how complete its plans have been. And piggybacking a little bit on Mr. Tessie's comments, I've done some research about what the town actually has done. They've been before the P&Z Commission, and those of you who have been there know they are very tough. They're tough on parking, they're tough on groundwater drainage, they're tough on sewers, and they require drawings and plans of what the pool will look like. The town has gotten through those wickets, and I think it's fair to say they have some conditions they have to meet, but they have successfully, let me read a few comments. They successfully had drawings that include site plans, floor plans, excavations of buildings, including corresponding engineering reports and water quality, soil bearing characteristics, and all project structures, pathways, drainage, sewer lines. This has all been before the P&Z and been approved by them. So the town has not been asleep here. They have gone quite a ways in doing what they can do. If you ask why they didn't have the construction drawings complete, all you need to do is read the newspaper and see that when the arsenic was found in the soil, they took a step back and waited. I'm told by people who know about soil contamination that arsenic is common in our area. It's manageable, and it's much more of a known commodity than what we had to deal with in the Mesa construction, which had PBCs and chemicals that were dangerous that we had little knowledge of. So for this reason, I believe it's possible that this two-part proposal of Districts 3 and 9 allows you the certitude, if you feel you need it, to review the construction drawings. I think they'll be done in 2 or 3 months. And also, it gives the Junior League a product that says, here is the pool. We've approved the pool. We have pictures of the pool. There's drawings of the pool. This is something they can use to knock on doors and support us. I can't tell you how, and I hope you agree with me, how appreciative I am that the Junior League has stood up and said, let us help. And here it is, they've said, we're going to do our best efforts, as they've done in the past, to fundraise $2.5 million. And that, here we live in a town where we're arguing over whether we can afford to air condition the snack bar, and we're going to walk away from $2.5 million. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I hope you will do the smart thing tonight, and you will either vote for this motion or let the original BET motion stand. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on the District 3 and 9 motion to amend. David Detchen, District 10. You want to speak on this? Okay, you're next.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, I appreciate the spirit of this particular amendment, which is really an effort at a compromise and an accommodation for the RTM, for the Junior League. However, I think it is important to address the question of what is the RTM's standard of review in terms of reviewing this budget that's been submitted to us. The fact of the matter is that the RTM does not really have any meaningful role in the budget formulation process. Obviously, some of our committees can try to influence that process by meetings with the Budget Committee of the BET and the like. But the fact is, it's the BET that prepares the budget, approves the budget, and submits it to us for final approval. And the question then becomes, what is our standard of review at that time? And I think what it is, and this is going to be my standard of review this evening, is first of all, are the various appropriations within the various items appropriate? And secondly, are any conditions that they've imposed on the appropriations both appropriate and adequate? One of the problems I'm having with both of these particular amendments this evening is that I don't see where either one of them significantly adds substantial additional protections for the taxpayers of the town over and above what's already built into the conditions that the BET has imposed. And if that's my judgment, and it is my judgment, that's the reason why, frankly, I voted against the First Amendment, and I'll vote against this one. Clearly, it would be a comfort to us, but I'm not sure we're in the budget formulation process. I think our review is the BET adequately watching the taxpayers' funding? I obviously can't say that having a bifurcated appropriation process like this, and remember, the second part of the appropriation will have to come from the BET, not from us. We can't control that. It may not necessarily lead to a delay, but clearly it is increasing the chances that there may be a delay if, in fact, we have this bifurcated process, even if the Junior League is in a position to begin their fundraising for the pool specifically. For that reason, will end up voting against both the amendments this evening.
Mr. Oberweger, District 5.
I stand before you again to comment on this new amendment proposal from Districts 3 and 9. First of all, I want to echo David Detchen. He's a very eloquent speaker, and I can only hope to state what he stated, which is that the BET, again, sitting right before us, are the parties that the general public, not us, have elected to do the budgetary review. They've already cut this project down, and they already have rules that will dictate when monies are allocated. To add additional rules for us to get involved on that level, I think is asinine. And I think we, as a body, need to stand up to people that think that they're just throwing smoke and mirrors of this isn't going to delay anything, because it could potentially delay something. So just because it isn't delaying it doesn't mean that it won't delay it. So think of the kids that live throughout this town that don't have access to any pools anywhere. And the pool that they've been swimming in for the past 20 years, at least for the last 10 years, has been disgraceful. And think about delaying that at all, possibly delaying it. And think about all the women that are sitting behind you from the Junior League who have worked passionately on this project for the last 8 years. And now we are at that moment where we need to take the initiative and follow the BET's directive of cutting it from 11.3 and accepting their proper number of 9.5 rather than cutting it further unnecessarily with the potential for further delays. So please vote against this amendment as well. Thank you.
Mr. Schneider, to be followed by Karen Fossiliotis.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I think Mr. Detchen's nailed it. Each of us has to look at ourselves as members of the RTM and ask us, what is our role in town government? Whether our role is mainly to pass on everything that comes before us. And I do agree we must give great deference to the BET, a very high standard. However, it is our obligation as representatives of the community, as a representative town meeting, to exercise our own independent judgment. I think that is the issue that's before us today. And however we vote on this motion, I think it's a discussion we should have among ourselves so we all understand what our role is. Thank you.
Karen Fossiliotis.
I'm going to be very, very brief. I urge you to vote for this motion for the reasons I stated before. I think that this body needs to take control of these projects, and by abdicating their responsibility, by not voting for this cut, you're basically saying you're a do-nothing body. Thank you.
All right. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? District 3, Mr. Conway.
Good evening. I think if you've been to a lot of the meetings like I have, you'll find that the RTM had plenty of time to find out about this pool. If you had gone to the BET meetings when they scrutinized and made their decisions on how much money they were going to subject to release and how they based that on, you would have a full knowledge of what this pool is all about. Ladies and gentlemen, these kids need that pool, believe me, and we have to give it to them because they can't afford the Boys and Girls Club, all of them. They can't get over to the YMCA or YWCA, and certainly they can't take the boat to Island Beach alone, but they can go to a pool. And that is the thing that you have to look at. 3 and 9 made a great proposal, and I commend them. They've kept the junior league in this thing. But I'd say let's go one step further. The BET over the years, and we have many, many times, subject to release, passed item after item. We trust them. They do their business. And believe me, they are very, very smart people. So I would ask you, think about what these people put in, the hours they put in, the questions they asked, and tell yourself, do you or I have the knowledge of whether we should put a bathroom with imported tile or cinder block or whatever? That's not our job. And by the way, the facilities, for the most part, I understand, especially bathrooms and things like that, are governed by the state regulations and the Board of Health. So we don't have too much choice as to what you may want to think you can design or not design. So let's go on with the project, folks, please. Thank you.
Kathy Youngman, to be followed by Tom Cornelius.
Thank you. First, we'd like to say that we greatly appreciate the efforts of District 3 and 9 in developing an approach to support the funding of the Greenwich Pool and Byron Park project. However, we remain firm in that we prefer the BET conditioned recommendation appropriation of $9.5 million. If the D3, D9 motion is supported, our next course of action would be to take your decision to our newly seated Board of Directors to determine how the Junior League will proceed. I'd also like to make a clarification on a few points that were brought up in the prior discussion. First of all, the full commitment of $9.5 million, if that is passed, it gives us the ability to start our fundraising campaign tomorrow. We can go in our first phase, a silent phase, and begin to build our pyramid and our donor base. It's something that's very important. We don't waste any time. We can start doing it tomorrow. So that's, again, something some people had brought up in the prior discussion. Also on our vote, it was brought up that there were no contingencies, that we were automatically full steam ahead with the Junior League. We did have contingencies in that vote. With 96% approval, we were pending approval of the BET and RTM and release of the money for construction costs and the final design, approval of the final design. So I did want to make clarification of that so everybody does understand. The Junior League looks forward to continuing to partner with the town on this project. I'm sure that you can understand that being aligned in our understanding of the details of the project funding and approval is critical. This body has always been known for its decisiveness and sense of vision in driving the town to its future. Thank you very much.
Tom Cornelius.
Good evening. I'm Tom Cornelius. I'm Chair of District 3. When we first started to make our motion and think about, the bottom line was that we didn't want to lose the funding from the Junior League at any cost. how would I look if the BOC motion had passed and then the Junior League had pulled out? How would that, and myself and the rest of us in the RTM, really look? How silly that would have been. But now that I have full confidence in the BET and their measurements and how to monitor the project, most of us in District 3 feel that we would want to fund the full 9.5 funding for the pool. And I don't want to say that we want to pull back from our motion, District 3 and 9, but we're not going to be able to. We want the full 9.5 million. That's our bottom line. And I'm not sure how everybody wants to vote, but what we wanted to make sure of was that the Junior League was in full blast. But our ultimate goal is to make the pool happen as soon as we can with full funding. Thank you.
Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? District.
Be very fast. District 9, I passed the card, and the majority of District 9 is voting against our own proposal.
Well, I haven't called for the vote. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? District 3 and 9, motion to amend the Byram Pool appropriation to $4,512,375. If you want to reduce that line item, you should vote yes. If you want to leave it at 9.5, you should vote no. All right. While we are voting, we will continue with the business of the meeting. If after the vote is tallied and announced there's a need to return to this item, I will entertain that. All right, any other motions addressed to 345 DPW, Building, Construction, and Maintenance? I am on page 14 of the RTM budget. 351, Building Inspection. 380, Fleet. 680, Board of Education. $701, Greenwich Library. 710, Perrott Library. 801, Parks and Recreation Administration. 812, Organized Recreation. 816, Ice Skating Rink. 822, Parks and Rec, Parks, Playgrounds, and Fields. 833, Beaches.
832.
Excuse me, 832, Marine Maintenance. 833, Beaches. 834, Harbors and Boating Facilities. 999, Fixed Charges. That brings us to page 18 in the Sewer Maintenance Fund. 361, DPW Sewer Maintenance. 361, Sewer Improvement. 219, Parking Services. 318, DPW Highway Traffic Engineering. 670, School Lunch. 317, DPW Highway Parking. 450, Nathaniel Witherell. 824, the Griff Harris Golf Course. 131, OPEB, other post-employment benefits. All right, that brings us to the end of the line items, and now brings us to the budget resolutions. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Our committee every year takes up the budget and bonding resolutions. Last Monday evening, we're assisted by Jeff Raymer of the BET. Mr. Raymer explained that the resolutions entitled Grants and Other Receipts, which are the budget resolutions, had two changes from the previous year. Resolution 12 has been revised. In its previous form, it required the town to apply insurance proceeds to pay for damage suffered by the town. Specifically, the town had a number of trees that were damaged in Hurricane Irene, and the insurance proceeds totaled over $1.3 million. The Tree Conservancy, who had donated trees over the years, had asked the town to apply the proceeds to replacing damaged trees, but the town had other uses for the proceeds, so this new resolution will allow the town to use insurance proceeds for, treat it as general revenues and use the funds for what it deems appropriate. Also, Resolution 41H is new. The town, through the Board of Ed, receives reimbursements from Medicare, and it comes in small allotments. This resolution will allow the sums to come in from time to time, and the Board of Ed will be able to accept those without having to come to the RTM for approval to accept these funds. We next took up the bonding resolutions. Mr. Raymer explained that while the bonding resolutions are going to are required for capital spending, the full amount will be issued, the bonds will be issued as needed, not all at once. And we noticed at the end of our discussions that the resolution contains some scrivener's errors, and so at the appropriate time, Mr. Moderator, I'll notify everyone what those corrections are. With the revisions as to the scrivener's error, our vote on the budget and bonding resolutions was 11-0-1, with District 2 abstaining because he wasn't there for the discussion.
All right, so the only changes are typos?
2 typos.
All right, let's have them.
Okay. These bonding resolutions and budget resolutions are beginning at page 25 of the budget book under the RTM tab. The resolutions that we changed on page 26, there is a further resolved paragraph in the next to the last line. There is a number in there that shouldn't be there, so we deleted $2,370,000 from the further resolve clause on page 26. And on page 28, paragraph 12, there was a word missing, so we inserted after FEMA proceeds the word "that." So the sentence now reads, "The comptroller is authorized to accept insurance proceeds and FEMA proceeds that the comptroller shall add to the appropriate fund accounts."
And that's it?
That's it.
All right. Is there any objection? We can adopt that. That is technically a motion to amend the budget resolution. We can adopt those upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection to those proposed amendments? Hearing none, the motion to amend offered by our Legislative and Rules Committee is adopted upon unanimous consent. All right. Waiting on District 6. You gave it in? We have the result of the vote on the District 3 and 9 motion to amend. Those in favor, 86, opposed 98, abstaining 3. That motion has failed. All right, that brings us to the end of item number 3, the budget and resolutions for fiscal year 2015-2016. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Item number 3. As amended, we did make some typographical changes. And proceed to poll your delegation. Once again, let me just remind you that in the event the RTM does not adopt a budget by May 15th, and this will be by tonight, because we're not meeting again, the budget as recommended by the BET would take effect. And I guess we didn't change anything, so we will need to await the tally of this vote before we can proceed to adjourn. I remind everyone the Labor Contracts Committee is going to meet with any interested members on May 28th at 8 o'clock in the Cone Room to talk about labor contracts. We have the result of the vote on item number 3, the budget for fiscal year 2015-2016. Those in favor, 154. Opposed, 24. Abstaining, 4. The budget for 2015-2016 has been approved. That being the end of our business tonight, this meeting stands adjourned upon unanimous consent. Thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home.